Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Maindeck Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Green, and today, on episode 27 of the Maindeck Podcast, I'm here joined by the lovely and talented Jason Toro.
Hey, Dan, how are you doing today? Lovely and talented is a bit extreme, but you know what? I'll take any superlatives I could get.
That's just how I feel about you, buddy. I'm so happy to have you on here with us today because I've been meaning to get you on to something here on Maindeck for a long time. We've been friends for a while. We kind of met during the old Panini Dragon Ball Z era.
But when the West was young, yeah, absolutely.
When the West was young, it's very true. It was a wild West back then of complete nonsense as Panini was running the show there. With Dragon Ball Z, and we have that whole retro community that still to this day, it's like they never changed. It's the same old crazy retro. I don't know. Do you ever spend any time like chilling on like the Facebook?
Oh yeah, community? It's fun to go on retro, and we could take probably like 12 hours of the day and just talk about the nonsense that is the retro Facebook page and what we dealt with, and have this Frankenstein's monster of a discussion. But no, I go on there and it's the same set of people saying the same set of things. No tumbleweeds. They always keep it, I guess the word's exciting.
Yeah,
to some.
It's a word you can use for it.
Yeah, it's a word you could use that is definitely G-rated enough. But yeah, no, definitely a important part of my TCG life, honestly. And where I'm at now with trading card games has a lot to do to my time with Dragon Ball, so it's exciting.
I completely feel that way as well. It was the game that really like catapulted me into like starting to do a little more, getting more involved in the community a little bit, and made me like realize I was interested in doing that, you know, more than just like on a local level. And that kind of started all this stuff. And now we're here today with you on this podcast. And before it gets too late, I want to make sure I mention the topic of the podcast today is actually this is our 8th and final look back episode for 2022, where we have taken 8 of the most popular TCGs. Well, actually, I should just say 8 TCGs, because I think there would be some argument as to whether or not some of the ones we picked were more or less popular than other ones. But we picked 8 of them, the ones that we felt like we could cover, and just went back through 2022 and spent hours and hours just talking about how every game has kind of done in 2022. And this one, Jason, you are on here to, in a little bit here, chat with us about that old classic Pokemon TCG.
Yeah, it's exciting because, you know, to kind of go in, to touch on that real quick, that's how I got into judging Pokemon, was all the stuff I did with Dragon Ball. Eventually it turned into me coming from the player side to be like, oh, I could do this organizer stuff. This isn't so bad. And it kind of put me where I am now within my community and within the game. So it's really cool how I'm here today to be able to talk about something I really have a lot of fun playing and really have a lot of fun complaining about.
Yeah, yes, and I think we'll be doing, this year I got back into Pokemon playing online for a little bit when I was doing some streaming, and I will be right there with you. I enjoyed it, and I will enjoy complaining about it a little bit here too. So it'll be kind of a fun podcast when we get there. But before we do, since we've just started touching on, you know, like your personal life and everything, why don't we just start at the very beginning, the day you were born? Or actually, okay. Let's go ahead a little bit from that. We want you to start there. But how about TCGs, Jason? Let's get a quick, brief history of Jason in trading card games for everybody.
Oh, neat. So, I would guess my first exposure was to, you know, like everybody else, was to Magic. At least in my age group, you know, as I'm pushing the other side of 100, it feels like at times. Yeah. I started playing Magic in Ice Age. We would play in school. Without the sleeves, bring the decks to the lunchroom or in the choir room and slam cards together, not knowing what the heck we were doing for the most part. And from there, I played a lot of Magic throughout middle school and high school. And then when I really got big into card games was the first iteration of Dragon Ball Z. Way back when we were with Score Z. That's when I really got big into it, helping out my local scene, running events, right out of high school, fresh-faced, young, ready to tackle the world. I won a regional. That needs to be known. I did win a regional. Oh yeah, I won a. Yeah, we had a regional at MegaCon in 2000 and I want to say I'd have to go find the little bindery thing. You remember those little GT binders?
I have one, but not because I won a regional.
Pretend I'm holding one up.
I bought it from someone.
It's right here, and I got that there. I actually, you remember Elmer Walter?
Yes, of course.
I beat him in top 4, and then I beat a buddy of ours, Paul, in top 2 with Orange Super 17 with Focus Mastery.
Yeah.
Apocalyptic Battle to level 5 to cheese my way to energies that stay on the table doing like 22.
17's gimmick like he got to use all his lower personality powers, so you get to level 5, you're just like stacked with like powers.
To give anybody just a real quick kind of idea of what Dragon Ball plays like, you have a set of personality powers you could use every turn. Pretend it's like a card in your hand that you could use once a turn in like Magic, right? Like once, and you get to do it. And Super 17's level 1, well, they had those high techs, right? Like the choose your own adventure high techs. That's what we like to call them. And then he had one with a blank power up rating and a blank attack. So you did the one with that shift for a focused attack. So basically I was discarding a card from my hand to tutor any attack out of my deck for whatever reason, playing stuff like Dying Planet, so Supreme Kai wouldn't have their discard pile. And yeah, I was basically just playing kind of like red deck wins in Dragon Ball, and it was awesome, and it was a great time. And then from there, I've kind of it's my play style 100%. I don't try to think, and you'll find that with my Pokemon decks when we get there too. It's the same. I want you to have to think about how quick you're going to pack your stuff up. And from there I've played everything under the sun, especially a ton of Score TCGs. When Yu Yu Hakusho, Inuyasha, stuff like that. Worked in trading card establishments pretty much as part-time jobs my whole life. Even now, I still take my time one day a week at a local card shop, and it's been a big part of my formative years and now my adulthood. And I really am blessed for everything I've done in trading card games. A lot of losing, but making a lot of friends and connections has been clearly the best part for sure.
Yeah, we talk about this every time this comes up, but it's about that social aspect. It's about getting to meet people. We talk about how like when we go to events, like we had the honestly the pleasure of having you stay with us at Gen Con this past year. And it was just so, all the tournaments we played in, like I didn't care about any of that stuff. I played a couple rounds, like whatever. It was all about just hanging out with everybody, having fun, cheering the people on who were like actually, try harding the whole thing, like trying to do well. Like we had our friend Mitch who made second at one of the My Hero provisional tournaments there and everything. We were all there like cheering him on and everything. But it's about the connections, right? Like that's what I love about TCGs. It's everybody just diving head first, like being fully like obsessed effectively with something together, right? That's what I enjoy about them.
Yeah, and it was definitely not about playing cat in the box.
Well, that game was pretty sick too, though.
Yeah, but not gonna lie, I played a ton since then, so we'll have to run that back eventually. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That's what it's all been about. The Gen Con trip was great, not because I played in an 8-man Final Fantasy event, because we were sweating Mitch and having a great time, just kind of being lawful degenerates, I like to put it, for a couple days, and it was a great experience. And that's what I do this all for, and stay in this community for experiences like that.
Yeah, I totally agree. However, you did say you played Inuyasha, and you're the only person I've had so far who also played Inuyasha on here.
So what'd you play?
So, the thing is about my time, I don't actually even remember like the playing itself. I just remember liking the game a lot and I think I only played in the first set, honestly, and then I got like distracted from something. Like I don't like. There's this period of time there where I wasn't really committed to one game. It was like kind of GT fell off, and then I was just like, I would like play a game for a set and then play a game for another set to play another game for another set or something. And like, so I was like, I went through, I was like, I'm playing Duel Masters now. I'm playing, I might even have my timeline right. I don't remember. I'm playing Inuyasha now for a little bit. Just whatever. Like, so I don't remember that, but I do remember I just really liked the mechanics of the game. What's your take on it as someone who probably remembers more of the game than me?
So at the time, I was running trading card events for Dragon Ball at this little shop called The Dugout, which has since closed, but down here. And basically, whatever I would want to commit my resources to in time, they would carry. So since we were big into score games, they did, Yu Yu Hakusho and everything else. So Inuyasha, I thought it was a lot of fun. I played Three's Company, which was, Ren, Shishomaru, it was basically all three of them. When you had all three of them, it was kind of like a Voltron style deck where your Shishomaru was basically just, unbeatable. I played Wolves because that was, Koga was my favorite character. But we're not going to talk about me actually liking the anime. We're just talking about me enjoying the trading card game. And it was a lot of fun, but we mostly played it because we got kind of caught up into Score Mania, because at the time they were on like product overload. We had Bleach, we had Inuyasha, we had Yu Yu Hakusho, which of the three, Yu Yu Hakusho is still by far the most fun I've ever had playing a game. It was very unique, I would say.
Yeah, we talked about this in a previous episode of the Lookback. We talked about how I missed Yu Yu Hakusho because I hadn't watched the anime at that time, so I just didn't get it. But I wish I had been in on it. And anyone else in the audience who's been listening to all the Lookback episodes probably is also screaming, is Dan going to bring up Case Closed TCG again?
Well, it's funny because I just was figuring out what OVAs I haven't watched a Case Closed the other day, because I'm slowly like working my way through a backlog of anime. I'm a work in progress as a human being. I didn't even know there was a TCG. So you just said that. Yeah.
Well, no, actually, I don't know why I said that in a surprise tone. Yeah, there was, and nobody knew about it.
Well, and count me in. I really wish you would have exposed yourself and played Yu Yu Hakusho, because I mean, I'm assuming by now you've watched Yu Yu Hakusho in some sort of capacity.
So at this point now, we watched the full kind of first season, and we started getting into the second one, and then I remember what happened. Now, I think I brought this up in a previous episode, and I couldn't remember why we stopped. We started moving houses at one point. Fair. So like we were watching for a little bit, and then we were like, "Oops, we got to do this," and then we just never went back to it.
Well, you should. And
yes, I want to.
And I don't know if you ever got to the part with the territory guys, with Genkai's new pupils. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make, in the game, there was a character that you could black out a word every turn, and neither of you could say it in the trading card game. Oh. So I literally scanned my way to winning that pre-release by having my opponent read their card effect to me, because I feigned I couldn't read the card. So their character took 2 points of damage. So it was like you versus XYZ character. You beat that character or lost, you went to your next character. Kind of like how the Dark Tournament was in the show. And I was like, "Oh, what does your Toguro do?" And he's like, she reads it off. And it was a player's mom. So that was the worst part. It was like this 9-year-old kid. His mom just had no idea what I was doing. I was like, "Oh yeah, you take 2 points and you lose the round and I win." And I got a sweet Team Toguro shirt for it that didn't fit. But anyway, old score TCGs. What a great time.
Seriously, though. So that reminds me now, when Panini was announced, this was a big moment for me. I don't know how like you reacted to the whole thing. I caught the announcement in 2014, early 2014 or something, when they said it's coming back, and they had that picture of Super Saiyan Goku level 4 and everything. I immediately like called up the gang and told everybody, and I went to the shop and I started putting up posters, and I grabbed all my old scorecards, and I set up all these like learn to play events, playing with like just whatever like scores. I'm like, it's gonna be kind of like this, guys. We gotta play this.
I went and printed that poster screenshot from Facebook legally at a FedEx nearby in one of the young kiosks, so we could bring it to our card shop. And all the same people that I played Pan-Z with played back then. All the people that we have met from the Florida community all played back then, and it was nuts. It was like the second coming. It was insane. We were so excited and so hype. A lot of it was nostalgia, and then a lot of it was just like shock. Honestly, like, are you what? Like,
shock was what it was for me too. Like I didn't expect.
Stunning.
Why would that ever happen? But it did.
It happened just for us. That's how I like to look at it.
It kind of felt that way. And then when Panini took the reins of everything, they the unfortunate thing is just that like, and I don't think that this certainly never is like the fault of like the developers of the game, because like Ake and Richie and crew were like super passionate about just like this, like it was purely just like a passion project. They're like, we have an excuse to do this, we have a way to get it in, let's like try and bring it back. But it's always been like Panini not necessarily caring about their like TCG division or whatever, and so like it just didn't get like the advertisement and stuff that it really needed. Like I honestly, here's what's amazing to me: that game had as many players as it did, given that there was never like a YouTube ad. There was never, I've never anything boosted on Facebook or anything, no social media, anything. They one time, I think they had an ICV2 ad. Actually, that might have been for Metacross. I don't even know if they did that.
Yeah, and what's crazy about all of that is the IP you have, right? You have Dragon Ball, you have Goku, you have like the king of a lot of our generation's childhood, and even people now, younger people and stuff like younger people, you know, like I'm speaking like I'm 500, but seriously, that we had all that, but yet you had to go on Facebook to even see anything about it, to a link to a WordPress. Like, really? When you could just be like, why don't we just put the money and backing into it? Like, and we were still having, you know, these large events that were almost grassroots in a sense.
Yeah.
That were built on you know, Richie and the development team's passion 100%. You could tell they cared about what they were doing, and they just didn't have that push from behind. And then the community, people like us, honestly, and other community leaders, and still community leaders to this day that are running essentially what is a dead card game, but only dead, you know, in terms of actual production, not dead in terms of people playing it, enjoying it.
Yeah, like grassroots is really what it felt like the whole time. It was just kind of, and I mean, like, the nice thing about that was that it did kind of allow people like you and me to to like get somewhere in it, you know, like be like start judging at a fairly high level. Because I mean, I guess just the silver lining of that whole thing was that there weren't, you know, 10 million people jumping into the game, and because I wouldn't have had the time to, I think, to compete with some other people who really wanted to be like answering all the judge questions. Even I was on Facebook as much as I could, but I guess like I'm just saying, like if the community was that much bigger, there would have been more questions, there would have been more people, you know, like try hard judging there, and I don't even know if I would have gotten to where I wanted to be. So like there was sort of like a slight blessing for me, but I still would have rather had the game just take off, you know, than anything else.
For me, because for people who may have listened in the past, Dan, myself, and a couple others were like the weapons triangle and Fire Emblem. We were like the three, you know, judges. We were like the secret ruling cabal in a sense, but we weren't, you know.
I want to actually, it was kind of like that.
A lot of people don't realize it was kind of like Calvin Ball with some of this stuff, where we were just making it up as we go, and then just be like, all right, Richie, does this do that? And then he'd be like, no. And we're like, oh, well, okay, sure, it doesn't do that, even though intuitively it would.
It would sometimes be like there was this like Facebook Messenger thread that existed, and anytime I saw that going off, I was like, oh god, what's happening now? And you'd go in and it'd be like Richie, you, me, and James Statmiller were the main ones in there, and someone would post a question and be like, so with card A and card, you know, Z that was revealed here now, that doesn't actually work. This wording's wrong. Does that mean this is supposed to do this and something? And we'd have to like all suddenly like sit there and like try and figure out how to actually interpret the rules now to make this like either to one, make it work the way that it was intended to work, or two, be like, well, okay, I guess card A is just different now.
Yeah.
Have to figure that out.
And to that end too, we were trusted with a lot of decision making outside, I think, the scope that we expected in a sense.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And it would become a game of, all right, let's tag Dan on Facebook. Oh, Dan answered it. Well, let's tag Jason, or let's just tag Jason, and then James would answer. And eventually all three of us would have sometimes a different answer to the same question, and then have to have like a come to Jesus moment and figure out what we were talking about. But yeah, it was such a fun time. It really was.
Yeah, like I wouldn't trade that for the world. It was just like it was an unforgettable memory of a time in my life where the most important thing in the world was figuring out how to interpret the rules for Dragon Ball Z.
You know, if a black dense ball could stop Krillin's Destructo disc, if you can answer that, you know, you we got it all figured out.
It's parenthetical text, man.
It's parenthetical text. What does it matter? Retro has to watch us now, and we have to say that we talked about Black Dense Ball and Krillin's Destructo Disc.
Talking about this here was just my excuse to be able to legally link it in the retro.
Yeah, now we by law we're allowed to. So we got that reach now. You're welcome.
Oh man. So Jason, after the sadness of Bandai just deciding they wanted to like actually make money with the Dragon Ball Z license, what did you do after that? How'd you cope following that?
Kind of just like a big montage of walking down the side of the road like the Incredible Hulk with the music and everything.
Hulk scene.
Yeah, the lonely Hulk music. No, honestly, I kind of drifted back to Magic pretty hard for a while there. Having a lot of fun with that. Had a lot of fun with that. And really, yeah, Magic and I kind of have this love-hate relationship. I love to hate it.
That's fair.
I really enjoy it. Don't get me wrong, but I have a lot I could say about local Magic communities versus online Magic communities, and especially in my area. And it's not to disparage anybody. I just think I've crept outside of some of that scene, especially some of the more edgelordy people and stuff like that. I don't deal with that, especially locally. That's not my thing anymore. So in turn, it's kind of turned me away from Magic in a sense. But really after Dragon Ball, it was a lot of Magic. And then I started working a lot at my local shop. And that's when I got into Pokemon pretty hard, becoming a professor, going through the process there to really get a Pokemon scene on this side of our community out in Florida. Here in Pinellas, we have Tampa. Everyone, like Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You know what Tampa is. On the other side of the bridge is where I am, and it's really trading card communities on this side of the bridge were not very big into Pokemon, stuff like that. So we had a real big, well, if we wanted to go play, or if my local community would play in a sanctioned event, they had to drive 45 minutes to an hour. So I took that with the kind of mentality I have with community in mind, and how enjoying building the Dragon Ball community, being a part of that. I wanted to build a community locally. So that's really where I spent a lot of my time with that. And now I'm doing that and playing a ton of Final Fantasy trading card game, like way too much, a lot.
That's awesome. We talked about this. Okay. So when I was setting up these podcasts, this is what I'm trying to say. When I was setting up these Lookback podcasts, I was so close to pegging you for our Final Fantasy podcast because I knew you'd been playing a lot of it. But then I really wanted to get on the Draw Games on here because I knew he was a fun guy to talk to as well. So, but yeah, I mean, I would love to hear a little bit just about your take on Final Fantasy right now.
So first off, shout outs to Gabe. Love that guy.
Yes.
Met him a handful of times. Met him at GenCon. He was at the event, and he donated a ton of extra prize support. A great guy to talk to. Saw him at the RVA event a couple months back, where I drove 12 and a half hours to. I'm not doing that again. But you know, my experience with Final Fantasy trading card game has been nothing but positive. Great community. Played it from the beginning. Actually got my first box at when did I get my first box? It was at the GenCon you and I judged together.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
When Brawly versus Brawly finals. That was riveting stuff. And I got my first box there, and it was me and Alec, Bearded Collectibles, if you remember Alec. Yes. He got me my first box, and from there I was like, oh man, IP I love. And a game that played like Magic, honestly, I was like, oh my God, seriously? This plays like Magic? And from there, I was hooked. COVID happened. Our scene blew up down here. And,
in the wrong way.
In the wrong way, absolutely. Yeah. It was pretty strong in our area and in the Tampa Bay area. And then COVID happened, and unfortunately, obviously, you know, things changed in general. We, for everybody's safety, you know, in a lot, in my opinion, and a lot of others. We, you know, had to stop those things. And now that everything, you know, is coming back to normal in a safe way, it's nice to have built that community back up. And I have met a bunch of new players locally and some old friends from 20 plus years ago who stumbled into it that I met from when I worked at my previous card shop outside of high school. So now I met a guy, you know, my buddy Ike, and I haven't, you know, I didn't see him up to that point, up to maybe 15, 16 years prior. Now we see each other every week playing this game, and it's a ton of fun. I highly encourage anybody who likes those kind of RPGs to check it out, especially if you like Final Fantasy 11 JPEGs that they just put on a card. They really like doing that.
The Final Fantasy 11 ones are some of the best. They're just so like You could
I
tell
mean,
they're just like early 2000s, like whatever terrible
yep,
computer graphics.
yep. It reminds me of the meme with "You're the most handsome guy here" with Squall.
Yes,
I wish that was a card,
I
or it's just the
know.
close up of his
I'm
face at
such a
the
huge Final
wall.
Fantasy VIII fan too.
Oh,
I
that's
would
why I
collect
said it.
them.
That's why I said it. I figured
Thank
that
you.
would pop you, but it's a great game. Great community, and we're finally starting to get our organized play back together and going hopefully next year. So a lot to look forward to with a very welcoming and open committee that I'm a part of. In the organizer sense, I helped run events in Florida, helped run the re-raise down in Orlando, or up in Orlando this year. And it's just a great community, great game, and a lot of promise in the future for what it looks like.
One thing that I've been thinking about a lot is how it it feels very different today in this era of TCGs that we're in a way that I think I don't know, it's just not always very apparent to me. I'm never thinking about it because there's so many TCGs running in the background that I just I forget to think about that Final Fantasy's already had 16, 17 sets or something at this point.
We just had 18.
18,
so, yeah,
18 sets. That's right.
Yeah.
I couldn't get I kept trying to correct Gabe in the podcast. And I got the number wrong. So I want to just leave it to you there basically. But,
for sure.
Back in the day when we were playing these score TCGs, right? Like how many sets did any of those ever make before they got canned? Case closed. I think maybe had a second set. I can't remember for sure. It might have. Inuyasha had 6.
Probably.
Maybe?
I tapped out around set 3.
Okay. Yeah, it was I feel like it got to around 5 or 6 or 7 or something. GT, it was a continuation of score, but that could only make it 4 sets, and the 4th one, if you have any packs, that is crazy valuable. With the 5th one planned, but just got canned or whatever. I guess that, but now we have Final Fantasy 18 sets, Dragon Ball Super, I don't know, the infinity sets at this. I can't remember the number. We talked about it in the podcast, but infinity sets at this point. We have UFS, which is Universes, which is My Hero Academia. That's had 1.5 billion sets at this point too. I just feel like everyone talks about the big 3 for good reason, right? Magic, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! They are eternal games. They're always running. They're always releasing sets. They've had the largest audience period, but I feel like that when I don't feel so bad at all about telling people to go check out smaller card games now, because they don't even seem to be dying as often as they used to. It seems like a lot of them have the ability to stick around a lot more than they used to.
Yeah, and I think that's credit to finding content from any crevice and crack as possible and not being afraid to revisit stuff. Because if you think about Dragon Ball, right, everything went chronologically in a sense. And what bugged me about that is, okay, well, we did that, and now they're not going to go back to it. Why would you not go back to that well, in a sense? And I think a lot of the newer card games are not afraid to revisit old content, or even rehash old content to detriment, which is a whole other conversation in terms of vomiting out product in a sense and stuff like that. But yeah, it's to the credit of the developers and the content they're using, especially for these newer games. If you look at Universes, right? Yes, right now it's My Hero Academia, but UFS was built on all these IPs. Back when I played it way back in the day, I played it because Samurai Showdown was, one of the prominent sets, and King of Fighters and stuff like that. There was always something to tap into that well and meld it together. And I think a lot of these modern games that are out right now have found a way to continue that longevity and make product and meaningful cards that keep people interested, even, 6-7 years down the line. For some of these newer games, Final Fantasy, I think now is almost 7 years old.
Yeah.
Which is insane to think about, but it's between chapters in overseas and then it coming here, it's a credit to the kind of people that play these games, and B, to the creators putting out content and meaningful content still to this day.
It also I think is affected by how interconnected we are now with the internet and social media and everything, how it's so much easier to get into a game than it's just easier to find a game than it was. You can order it online. We're like, we talk about back then, it's like you got to go to your local shop, be like, hey, I want to play Case Closed TCG. Can you order it in? And they go, okay. And they order it in, and then you go and you buy the starter and you go, cool. And then you sit there and wait for someone else to come in and be like, I want to play Case Closed TCG, right? Whereas like today, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to go to Facebook and I'm going to join the Case Closed TCG group, and now I'm chatting with all these people and like, oh, they're ordering online, so I'll go to that site and I'll order this. And then we have now, after COVID too, we especially have like lots of online play options for TCG, so it's so much easier just to like engage in every way with the hobby. Where I think that helps people. I think it helps that like core base of players stay there, that make sure that printing sets is still profitable for companies. And I think we're still going to see them die. Like, don't get me wrong. It's like, there's still going to be ones that fade away. And then we're especially in the age of Kickstarter TCGs now, where like, you got to be real careful with some of those fade before they even get make the print run of the first set, and some of them will fade quickly, and some of them will linger on, and some of them will become big, and that's where it's like really a lot riskier. But I feel like any of these like established TCGs at this point are much lower risk to get into, because they sort of just have that core player base who's able to link in with each other in a way that we could only dream of back then.
Yeah, could you imagine a 16-year-old me with like access to Amazon and a credit card?
No.
I would have had every Victorious Trail. I would have had everything. I would have had it all. I would have every Dumb Saiyan Saga Dream Battle foil rare that would have been out there. Just every little stupid thing that I take for granted now that I do not buy, because I have sensibilities, sure. But yeah, it goes to ease of access, just like you said, and ease of that getting into those communities. It's just as easy as opening up Facebook and typing in the name of the game, or not Facebook, I'm sorry, YouTube, or even Facebook, and type in the name of the game, and now you have videos, thousands of people or hundreds of people talking about it, and now all of a sudden, boom, you're in. You at least have a foot in the door to all these games out there, and that's, I think, kind of like you said, a large part of why these games have such longevity now.
And honestly, these days, when I'm looking at whether or not I think a TCG is going to go under anytime soon, one of the first things I'm looking at is actually how big is the publisher publishing it. And the bigger they are, the more afraid I am for a game that has a small player base, right? Because I've talked about this a few times too, but it's like, it's when Hasbro puts out, or, Wizard of the Coast under Hasbro puts out like Transformers TCG. If that's not hitting Magic numbers, then they're looking like, well, we should probably just put more money into Magic then. And that's how that kind of stuff gets canned. Whereas when you have these just like smaller companies like Hobby Japan is just publishing Final Fantasy, and like I don't think they require the same numbers that even like Bandai does necessarily to be able to consider their game successful and keep it running. And I think that's a very nice thing too.
I agree, and we all actually locally got a little scared when Final Fantasy started canceling stuff like First Soldier and Record Keeper and stuff. We kind of clenched up a little bit, but then we realized like our footprint through Hobby Japan, because it is a smaller avenue, and it's kind of not less resources, but less resources actually being put into it. I think they're happy with getting that footprint out there and product out there, and they're not looking at this big impact, which is thankful for us, because it is through just Hobby Japan, and that's their sole focus.
Yeah. So I definitely agree with your call to action to go look into Final Fantasy, look into any, like, don't be afraid of games just because they aren't Magic, Pokemon, or Yu-Gi-Oh these days. Please. Really don't think that. I think it's hard to, it's one of those things where it's just ingrained in you, right? If you've been a longtime TCG player, you're like, yep, TCGs die. They all just die eventually. Like sure, but yeah, so do we. So like, like whatever. But I think it's time to like revisit that sort of heuristic in your head a little bit, and be like, well, actually, I think it's easier for them to last now, at least longer than they used to. And in what we're seeing, like quite a bit longer, because even though it's been like 18 sets, and like COVID aside, Final Fantasy, which had its impact, but like the recovery now after COVID is looking like Final Fantasy is still just like growing. Everything I hear from everyone is like new players coming in. Everyone's interested. They're just waiting to get like a big OP schedule coming next year. And it seems like, if it didn't die from COVID, what's actually going to be required to kill it?
Yeah. Just don't come into it expecting a great Final Fantasy VIII deck. I'm sorry, Dan. I know it sucks. I thought the seed candidates and or I thought the disciplinary committee would maybe push it over, but unfortunately, it's just not great. I'm sorry. They're fun though. They're a lot of fun to play.
You got that cool full art Zell, right?
Yeah, but it's a cool looking full art. You're absolutely right.
Oh no, he's
cool
bad.
He's okay. So I don't want to segue too deep into it, but okay, if you have a maximum 5-card hand, draw 2 cards at the start of my turn. I now have 7 cards in my hand, right? I attack with Zell. His ability is discard 2 cards from your hand, give him 3,000 power. So if I want to commit 2 cards in my hand to make him a 10,000 power forward to maybe ping something for 8k, that's for the way Final Fantasy plays right now, that is way too steep of a cost to entry. It needs to be like discard 1 or maybe he's a 4-drop 8k instead of a 4-drop 7k. But that's just what he looks great. Looks stunning, looks wonderful. I love Zell. I'm a big mark for Zell. He's probably my second favorite character from that game.
Yeah, he's that just from what I know from TCGs in general. As soon as you said you discard 2 cards to give him plus 3k power like this, and from the numbers I've seen Final Fantasy, that sounds terrible.
The cost to entry isn't there, but we have great cards like 1,000,000 copies of Squall. If you like Squall, and we just got an insane selfie card, which is cool. So there are characters that are doing very well from themselves from the game, just not an archetype yet.
Sure. Do they have a Zell that accurately mimics how you actually played him in the game by just limit breaking him and then punch rush booyahing combo over and over as fast as you can?
Well, I thought every character was just hitting square or hitting circle until limit
break.
Yeah, because you never press attack. I would always just hit circle until
I don't even know what that attack thing does. It's just once it says limit, I know I can attack.
Yeah, I know I could do something. I could shoot them with AP ammo, stuff like that. But yeah, it's just unfortunately not a good archetype. But the game is great. The community is even better, and I strongly, and that goes for any TCG. If you are take this as kind of some advice from somebody who's played infinite games and is not afraid to play infinite games. Don't be afraid to get out there, look at something new that interests you. You'll be surprised the amount of people that are willing to help new players and the amount of resources out there to get you into a game. So you could be the one person at your card shop. Hey, I would like to demo this game with you. Hey, would you like to learn this? Host a demo night. Get yourself out there. You'll be surprised how much your LGSs will actually help you with that too, because they want new people in their stores. They want people enjoying their game and bringing revenue to their stores. And most of all, just having a great time. And that's, at the end of the day, it's why we do all this.
It's just really fun. I love smaller card games, especially because it's the problem with Magic and Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh is that to break into that and perform and hit a high level and do any of that stuff is crazy difficult. You have to have a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of sweat, and a lot of luck in order to become a pro Magic player or anything now. Which, if that's your one goal in life, that's awesome. Go for it. I hope you get there. But if you want to become a pro, My Hero Academia or pro Final Fantasy, you're not going to hit. Obviously, the reward is not quite there as much as it is for Magic. Although I'm sure some people would debate if it's even really there for Magic right now.
Yeah.
But you will still be able to be on top of the world, and it's a lot easier. It's way easier. There's a smaller pool of competition, and honestly, then that whole community thing you mentioned, you'll meet so many awesome people who are just there loving playing that game, and you'll find games that you like. I hear a lot of people who they try Magic and then you were talking about this earlier, it's just not working for them community wise, maybe isn't great, or they're just getting annoyed by the land system or something. There are mechanics that don't jive with them. There are games you can play that might just hit those things better in your brain, fire more pistons for you. If you don't like lands, try Final Fantasy. That's got a totally different resource system, but it plays a lot like Magic in a lot of the same ways, but it's got all its own little tweaks in there. Or try Battle Spirit Saga when it comes out later this year. Or play Dragon Ball Super. Try that one. That's got all your cards in your hand can become your lands. Then you're playing all your other stuff. There's a lot of games out there that are a lot of fun, and just more people need to play more of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely don't be afraid of barrier of entry for a lot of these games. A lot of these games we talked about, you can get in super cheap.
Yes.
And like most of the competitive, one of the competitive decks in Final Fantasy just comes from a starter with upgrades, and they, all it takes is a deck to an idea to go with from there, and get connected with the community, and you can get everything you need for your deck, and just have a good time and enjoy yourself.
100%. So speaking of getting into small card games, let's talk about how Pokemon's been this year, which is the
Yeah.
complete opposite side of the spectrum. Pokemon in 2022. So 2022 was it was a year for Pokemon. I mean, there were a number of sets that came out. I know that's not much of a statement, but it started the year off with Brilliant Stars and had then Astro Radiance. Pokemon Go finally had an actual set in Pokemon, which was like a pretty, like something that's been like, there have been Chinese knockoffs of Pokemon Go packs for like literally like since Pokemon Go came out. But now there's actually officially a Pokemon Go set that released, then followed up with Lost Origin and Silver Tempest. So we had a actually, honestly, a very refreshing, just five booster sets to see for a major, like for a big three card game. If you look at Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh, it's like, that was their January.
Yeah, and no special commemorative boxes with new cards you couldn't get and stuff like that. No, just 5 sets, and then their product, like the GX boxes and stuff like that. We did also have we had the Ultrazard collection this year, which was
yes.
Ooh,
I want to talk about
itself.
that.
Yeah, definitely want to talk about that. Yeah, for sure.
That was an interesting thing.
The product cycle this year has been very, very good, very refreshing, and it's been. I honestly, overall, I'm really happy with the sets we got this year for the most part.
So I don't know if you have any other way you want to go. So I think let's just talk about the sets, and then we'll go to like noteworthy events and product releases, other things, stuff like that. But like just starting with Brilliant Stars at the beginning of the year. This was actually, so, and just so everyone knows too, I think I mentioned this at the beginning, but I actually do finally have some Pokemon experience to lean on here. It's been many, many years, but this year I got back into playing it online with streaming. So I actually will have, unlike some of these other podcasts, I will have actual opinions to put in here. And Brilliant Stars was actually correct me if I'm wrong here, Jason, a really good set, I think.
Just based on Arceus alone, it's insanity, to be honest with you. What Arceus V-Star did to the game in a small vacuum was insane, like in terms of deck building, right? Like,
yeah, Arceus V-Star created this colorless V-Star Pokemon. You can actually Brilliant Stars created the V-Star mechanic, by the way, like which is the remake of the what was it? What was the one in Sun and Moon?
You're right. GX. Yeah.
GX. Yeah, the GX mechanic. Okay. So the earlier Pokemon stuff, I'm gonna need to rely on you for making sure I'm naming things correctly. But so it's a once per game power that you can use. And Arceus V-Star was in particular a colorless V-Star Pokemon that had its basic attack, Trinity Nova, just allowed you to fill other Pokemon on your bench with energy. And then the V-Star power on Arceus V-Star allowed you to just tutor cards.
Any two.
Yep. And what I think some people might look at that and think that's like I don't know. I could see people making the argument that is just a not an interesting card because it just kind of does everything a deck needs to do. And I don't disagree with you. However, I think it's really cool to just have this, like, if there's a Pokemon you're trying to make work, just slam in an Arceus engine and it's like, gives it the energy, gets the cards I need, like sets it all up. Like it just kind of does everything so that like, that does make any of your decks just kind of like function on a basic level, which is nice.
Exactly. So, and not to jump too far ahead, but that's how Worlds was a format. Look what won Masters, Flying Pikachu, and why did it get there?
Because Arceus and because Palkia is really good.
Well, yeah. Well, it was also an excellent meta call.
Yes.
but Arceus enabled that. Without Arceus, we would have not had that archetype the way it was. And what Arceus V-Star did is it allowed a lot of not necessarily unviable cards. They were not unviable, but maybe a little slow. Especially one of my players locally was big on Charizard VMAX. Mm-hmm. And once we got Arceus V-Star, that kind of like got that ball rolling on that deck and made it actually a thing with Charizard VMAX, and then eventually we got Charizard V-Star, which even brought that up more just in terms of the damage threshold you had and access to. Also, we had other support, like supporter cards at the time and stadiums and stuff to help out, such as Magma Basin and stuff. But ultimately, Arceus is what brought that kind of, oh, I can play XYZ card to the forefront versus, okay, I'm playing Fusion Strike Mew, I'm playing 4 Genesect, 4, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of like these much more bread and butter, and where your meta calls were just your trainer suites and items versus your actual Pokemon setup.
Yeah, and in addition to that, Brilliant Stars also introduced, you're going to have to correct me if I'm wrong here, I think it introduced Trainer Gallery to English?
Yes. Well, no. We had Trainer Gallery for a bit, but this is we didn't think we would have it as an everyday or every set thing.
Ah, gotcha. Okay, it's just started.
Now it's a thing we have all the time.
Yeah.
Whereas before, when we were first getting it, like as we got it and we were like, oh wow, these are really cool. Thought nothing of it, because a long time ago we had the Pikachu, the Sneasel. I forget which set this was, but there was the Pikachu, the Sneasel, and they were all trainer galleries too. Okay. And we went for a while without them, and now we have them every set. And they're actually before they were the Radiant Collection way back when, So they've been different names, but now it's something we have every set, and those are just fun to open.
Yes,
it is just super cool to see that. It doesn't take the spot of your. You can still get a GX, you can still get a big hit and a trainer gallery, or you can get a holo rare and a trainer gallery. So that's a nice feeling, which I thought was great for just kind of consumer confidence. If you're going to buy something for, your nephew, your niece, I have an 8-year-old. So if I go buy something for my son and he pulls a trainer gallery, I know he's going to be excited. And the frequency you pulled those just made it really fun to open product.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with that. So I think the year was off to a really good start with Brilliant Stars, with just kind of like making more decks function and then making packs more fun to open. And I also totally agree with you on a point you made about this being fun for kids to open, because we're not going to be able to escape this conversation really without mentioning the fact that Pokemon is really reliant on its wide appeal, as why it stays so dominant in the marketplace. It has, there's kids who just get into it because it's Pokemon cards and they just want Pokemon cards. And, making sure that when kids are opening their packs and they're staying excited about what they're opening is an important thing to do, to make sure that they maintain being customers of yours, or their parents continue to be customers of yours and that kind of thing. So yeah, smart moves.
And to speak on that, one of my biggest things is trying to have a community for kids.
Yes.
Especially as somebody who's played card games for a long time, we know how some of these communities can be when they get together, in terms of how they conduct themselves. And the biggest thing for me and Pokemon is having a space where everybody could feel comfortable regardless of age and enjoy themselves. We have, I think he's 12. We have a 12-year-old that plays with all of our adults every single week. And we make sure, it's a place where we are functioning adults and keeping, the Disney language, play and being like that, and supporting the community, understanding that they're looking for something to do and have a good time too. And we should be able to facilitate that as leaders in the Pokemon community and players.
Yeah. And that's awesome. I think that's critical. And that kind of mentality is what's allowed Pokemon to thrive. Even in our area too, for many years, we've had some really great guys who have run our Pokemon events up here, who always made sure to help out kids. I have several of my nephews over there at different times in their life when they've been into Pokemon, and they've gone in and they've gotten to play games with the professor there who's running the events and everything, and just made them have a wonderful time. So it's always important. And I think there's no question why Pokemon continues to have the appeal it does. Because the TCG specifically in this case, the video game, sure, it's its own reasons too, but the fact that the video game continues helps, but then the fact that the TCG continues to be what it is because even I think that I wish that Pokemon would make more risks with with their card design and what they're putting out there and everything. But the reason that they don't do that, and they continue to do cyclical kind of development where they go back to the same mechanics over V-Star is just GX abilities and everything, and EX is coming back with Scarlet and Violet and all that stuff. The reason they do that is because they're really just kind of cycling through the things that work. And that excite the audience that they know that they have, and they're just continuing to put out a consistent product that will kids will continue to be into forever and get into it. And then when they grow up, they have played Pokemon, and then, maybe eventually they'll have kids and be like, hey, you should play Pokemon. I played Pokemon when I was a kid. And it's just like, it's almost this like Star Wars merchandise kind of like mentality of like when George Lucas made the prequels, and he's like, well, I got to make sure the kids like them. And like Pokemon does that too. And you can't really fault them for it, because that's sort of just their niche. That's what they've carved out, and that's what works for them really well.
Yeah, time's a flat circle. We're always going to go back to what works when you have such a long, you know, term thing like the Pokemon trading card game and Pokemon in general, right? A big thing about what keeps people engaged is something new, right? But what we remember and what we really enjoyed when that comes back, it gives you that hit like, oh, whoa, they're making that for me. That's just for me. And there are a ton of people that feel that way. And it also it keeps things fresh while touching on things we enjoyed, which I really like about Pokemon in the trading card game for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Any other thoughts on Brilliant Stars, Jason?
Not really. I thought that Brilliant Stars was a very great set. I did not enjoy the rush for everyone to get Arceus and Arceus V-Star. In terms of obviously, V-Stars, your V-Star pull rates are different than your other pull rates in your boxes. So that was kind of tough. They eventually fixed that later on down the line with the Arceus V box and the Arceus V-Star collection. Do. As they all, I mean, they always do. Or something I wanted to touch on, which I'm sure we can touch on now. Think their decks. I mean, look at the V Battle decks. You have your V Battle decks, which are kind of that's your basic, but then you have your League Battle decks, and those are constructed viable decks. Like the Shadow Rider decks and the Mew deck and the Urshifu decks. Pokemon's always good at that. So at the start, you kind of have the growing pains, like, okay, well, I may have to go spend on the secondary market, or I may have to trade a lot to get to those. But that's why it's a trading card game, right? We need to be actually out there trading, unless you're Daddy Warbucks and just drop $200 on the table and just do it that way. Which more power to you. But outside of that, I thought Brilliant Stars was great. We had some really good trainer support, and obviously Arceus was just through the moon, an excellent card.
Yeah, and the V Battle decks are a great thing to mention too. I don't know when those started. The decks like that started when prior to this stint playing this year, the last time I had played was like in Black and White era, and I don't remember there being any like really good decks back then.
So we had, not too long after that, we had the Rayquaza Keldeo battle decks. And they weren't great decks, but they were playable. Keldeo was a very good card, and that's where it started the mentality of, let's put these very good trainers and item cards in these decks. So it was very easy to go pick it up, because you needed the Versus Seekers, the trainers mails, and everything else that may have came inside. Yeah. Because maybe your shop didn't have access to those packs, or maybe they were $5 a single, where you can go and buy the deck. It's a 2-player deck, and you're getting 4 copies of each.
My experience with Pokemon prior to trying things out this year involved playing those precons that are built like a Magic deck, where they have like 20 energy in them and a few like multiple evolution chains, but only like one of the stage 2 of some of them, and like 2 of a stage 1 and one of there's 2 of a basic and one of it's stage 1 or something. And those are honestly just not, those aren't even playing Pokemon. They're playing some weird alternate reality, like the kind of the original version of Pokemon when it came from Wizard of the Coast. But you get stuck in these loops playing those decks where like you have nothing you can do. You're just drawing energy every turn, and you have no powerful trainers to be able to like cycle your hand, or you had like one and you like used it early on, and then nothing else happened. You get nothing after that. And if that's your experience with Pokemon and that's why you aren't interested in playing it, you just need to pick up one of these V Battle decks instead, and then you get to play like actual Pokemon, and that's I found a lot more fun than what I thought it was.
Absolutely, and definitely get the League Battle decks. The V Battle decks are like the level
League Battle.
You want the League Battle decks; those are the level 3, and those definitely. And then soon we're gonna have the Worlds product. That they're not playable legal, but they will be the Worlds decks, and those are going to be really great. Those are people that piloted those decks to great success, and it's really cool that we have that ability to get people in a game. I will say that the starter decks up until recently, up until the more modern era of Sun and Moon, we finally started to get starter decks that were really like, okay, this is cool. Like one of my biggest guilty pleasures is going on PCGO and playing the theme deck ladder.
Okay.
Because there are a ton of theme decks that are just a ton of fun in that vacuum.
Really? All right.
There's a ton of cards like what's the Gardevoir one? I think it's Mental Might or something like that. That deck is so much fun to play before we got all this new stuff. It had the Mill Tank that dealt 70 more damage if your opponent had a stage 2 Pokemon, stuff like that, which is fun in a vacuum where those are the only cards you're playing. Similar to like, a limited format or like an L3 format with like XYZ amount of sets. That's like one of my guilty pleasure kind of things. And that came from them actually looking at theme decks like, okay, rather than just here's one of your payoff, right? Here's a couple copies of your payoff, and here's like a couple, like maybe 1 or 2 copies of those really good trainers to kind of give you an idea, and then a bunch of your hops, your Tiernos, your draw 3, your draw 3 cards, which a lot of other games are like, oh, man, draw 3, and then in Pokemon you're like, draw 3, I can Colress, and we both have full benches with Skyfield out, and I'm drawing like 14 cards.
Yeah.
Draw supporter.
Those cards in actual like standard Pokemon are not considered competitive at all. The supporters that just say draw 3. There's way better ways to cycle through. And Pokemon is if you're unfamiliar, the way I always tell people about it these days now is Pokemon is like playing vintage Magic. And I don't mean that. Some people have taken that as like I'm saying a negative about the game. I'm not. I'm saying a positive. I'm saying you can go spend $30. You can play vintage Magic style games with people where you are going to go do crazy things on your turn, but your opponent's going to do the same thing also. And then you go back and forth just trying to like haymaker the opponent, one up the opponent. And if you make one mistake, then it's going to cost you the game. And then a couple turns later, you're going to be like, I see what I was supposed to do there. I understand now what I did wrong. And if you like that style of gameplay, that's what is actually really fun about Pokemon TCG competitively. It all plays like that. And that's a really enjoyable experience to have for the people who like that style of gameplay. And so it's a positive thing, but it's vintage Magic to me.
Absolutely. Like if you like Wheel of Fortune, then you will love Professor's Research,
Yes.
And for me, like the thing that I like to talk, like when I don't want to get too off the deep end here, but when I talk about Pokemon to other trading card games, a lot of trading card games we play are reactionary, right? I do something, you have a chance to respond. Pokemon is proactive. Majority of the time you will react to your opponent's plays, but not in the sense that I'm going to react to what you just did. I have to wait till you do everything with that card, and you might have an opportunity to do something with that card before I have a chance to react. But, like, I have to watch you do it. I get to sit there, I get to spaghetti all my cards onto this field and go, okay, it's your turn. And my opponent's like, well, I'm going to do this, this, and this, because A, they probably thought ahead, or B, they hit the top deck, which, that's every card game.
Right.
And Pokemon has this deck building constraint in a sense of, but not a constraint, actually. For a lot of people, it's a blessing that you are building around what you can do to stop your opponent doing from something versus doing what you can to stop your opponent in the moment.
Right.
You're kind of more playing blankets, like the biggest scenario that a lot of Magic players like, what if Pokemon had a sideboard? I said Pokemon would be completely unhinged with a sideboard.
Yes.
I couldn't even think about a Pokemon sideboard in a way that I would be like, oh, this game is a lot of fun with a sideboard. I think a lot of playing Pokemon, a lot of the fun is that I put these 60 cards together. I'm hoping to, again, I love bringing up the weapon triangle. I'm hoping that, my rock beats your scissors and you didn't bring paper, and then figuring out how in the future or how for this tournament I'm going to be able to beat paper with rock.
Yeah. Yep. I totally agree with something you said there, but the proactive play, and I want to say, I didn't appreciate this. I did not fully appreciate what that meant. Like, I knew it for years. I've always known, like, there's no instant speed stuff in Pokemon. Your opponent gets to take their turn and that's it. I didn't appreciate what that meant strategically until I started actually trying to win games while I'm streaming for people. And I started to really understand that, like, as a TCG player, I always know it's about, you're looking multiple turns in advance. Okay, what am I going to do next turn? Am I going to do the turn after that? How am I setting up for that? But Pokemon, because there's no other recourse, you very much, if you want to win more games, you have to sit there and think about what is the worst thing my opponent's going to do on their turn, and how do I make that not be as bad as it could be. And my most like kind of clear cut example of this, of like sort of of coming up with a play that is very counterintuitive to most people like in the moment, but when you're thinking about your opponent's turn, it makes a ton of sense, is when you have a situation where, let's say your opponent has a I'm gonna just bear with me if you don't understand what this stuff does. Your opponent has a Radiant Greninja out there with like 1 energy on it or something. Radiant Greninja has an ability that KOs 2 things on your turn. You have your opponent has 2 prizes left, and you're like 1 turn away from knocking out enough stuff to be able to kill them because you're set up or whatever. But you have a couple of your support basic Pokemon on your bench that have 90 or less HP, and you are about to pass the turn, use your attack and pass the turn when you realize, hang on a second, my opponent can play an energy and then use Capacious Bucket on their turn to put another energy onto their Greninja, and then if they switch into the Greninja, they can use the Greninja's attack to take out these 2 support Pokemon, and that gets them the 2 prizes. That's the only way they can get 2 prizes. So then you go, okay, hang on, I'm going to use Scoop Up Net, and I'm going to pull up one or both of these Pokemon. And then suddenly you pass the turn to your opponent, and then you see them concede. Because they were planning that whole time. They're like, I'm going to use Greninja, I'm going to take these 2 things out. And you would have had no way to respond to that in the moment of it happening. But if you're thinking ahead and you're playing proactively and you're like, I need to know what my opponent is doing exactly. I need to be able to come up with that line of play and then figure out how to use my puzzle pieces. It's like you don't play Scoop Up Net to do that in your deck. You play Scoop Up Net so you get to reuse effects on Pokemon. But you can have these tools and you can be thinking ahead of your opponent, not ahead of you, just thinking at the same turn as your opponent, basically. And then you can actually respond proactively to everything they're doing, and that wins you games in the game. And I did not fully appreciate that until I started playing it.
Absolutely, and it sounds like to me this is filthy drizzle Greninja stuff, and so that you were trying to save, or But anyway, but you're exactly right. In those situations, like, oh, all my opponent needs is the energy boss, I'm dead. Like, oh, well, how do I play around energy boss? Okay, can I play the Scoop Up Net? Can I tutor? Can I even dump a stage where, like, sometimes you don't want to evolve, but sometimes you have to because, oh, it's going to give me that hit point buffer. So if they boss it out, it's stuck in the active. It can't do anything, but now they just can't knock it out. And then you have that risk reward, right? Well, you evolved now, right? And you're like, okay, I'm not going to get knocked out. All right, they're going to boss in the active with no energy. Now what are you going to do? Now your opponent has 4 turns to get set up while you're digging. You know what I mean? There's so much tit for tat with that, especially with how sort of porters and trainers work, especially with the more you play the game and the wider your breadth of knowledge is of the game, in particular with your deck and then with what your opponent's playing.
Completely agree. So back on topic just a little bit here. That was a really nice aside because I think it's really worth talking about that too a little bit, because I think a lot of people who are going to listen to this aren't Pokemon players and might have misconceptions that I think it's worth clearing up a little bit. Astral Radiance was the next set that came out, and Astral Radiance introduced some of the Hisuian Pokemon from Legends Arceus, which is cool. But most importantly, Palkia.
Palkia, baby, that's my deck of choice. I enjoy playing because it's so easy. Caveman can do it, just like Geico. And for me, that's great. I also thought it was a refreshing kind of have this Pokemon that could attack and set up versus kind of just like, I'm going to set up my attacker. No, with Palkia's V-Star ability, setting up that extra water energy from the discard, which, as you know, and if you don't play, it's very easy to get water or get energy in the bin in general, especially water. You could bucket for your energy, pitch it with Quick Ball, pitch it with Ultra Ball, pitch it with Professor's Research, pitch it with a multitude of cards we have in the format to get that stuff in the discard pile, set up Radiant a second Greninja. Attacker. Yeah, exactly. Radiant Greninja with concealed cards. So it was such a fun deck to play and set up. And then we had my favorite card I think we've had in this block of Pokemon, the Irida supporter is just lights out an insane card.
Yeah.
It's nuts. And then with the rule changes coming up, which we'll touch on at the end, it's interesting to see the impact it's going to have on cards like that. But yeah, Astral Radiance was a pretty good set. Obviously, Palkia was the runaway MVP of the set. It was the one deck you really wanted to play going into that, and it was fun trying to figure out what flavor of the deck you wanted to play. There were, especially now.
Yeah, more versions have sort of been created as more different kind of haymaker water Pokemon have come out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like at first we were playing Starmie V, the one with the free retreat and then has 50 for each energy, stuff like that. And now it's kind of shifted to decks playing Empoleon V, for kind of more of a control-y kind of block with its ability and stuff like that. So it's very cool to see that shell evolve over time, but it was definitely a cool part of that set. And I really like the Trainers Gallery from that set. In general, I really enjoy the Trainers Gallery, but
Yes.
I think Astro Radiance had some great cards, and it was nice to get the Hisuian Pokemon into the game finally. It was very nice to see them start touching on that, and then as we went, what Hisuian Pokemon we've got, and how they've included them into the game. I think they've done really well. In particular with the Hisuian Pokemon with the supporter lines, incorporating those games. I think that has been really cool. Sorry for getting out of frame here. I was not prepared and didn't fully charge my headset because I'm a fully functioning adult, but that's okay. We'll charge it in a second. But yeah, I think Astro Radiance did a really good job of that. It was a really good set. Not anything that really blew me away personally, but it really got my favorite deck to play in the format, it being Palkia.
In my opinion, the most important thing that Astro Radiance brought is actually introducing the Radiant Pokemon to the game. That's the first set that had them. And Radiant Pokemon, for people who aren't aware, are shinies, which is cool. They're always basic. And they have a special Radiant rule, which is you may only have one Radiant Pokemon in your deck. And I've talked about this when it comes to other mechanics in other games as well. This shows up as in a mechanic in Grand Archive. It shows up as a mechanic in Dragon Ball Super. It shows up as a mechanic in what was the game? I can't remember. There's a few other games that do this though. It's a mechanic where you just get to it's a mechanic on a card that says you can only have one of this in your deck, and they're powerful cards. And I just there's something about that flavorfully that I just really dig. In Pokemon, it's a little different because in Pokemon, if you want to see your whole deck turn one, you can sometimes. It's like not like that cool, but I like it I like it in games where it's like I drew my awesome card. Like I was able to get this, and that's going to change the game, and it introduces sort of like I can see people not liking it too, because that is sort of like that. Well, I lost because he drew the ultimate card or whatever. But I just find that fun because I also really enjoy the choice that you have to make when you sit down. You go, now which of these super powerful cards takes that slot in my deck? The Pokemon did this with Ace Trainers a while back too, right? Which although. Like, did people play more than Computer Search? Because I know Computer Search is like.
Really oh yeah, Scramble Switch is nuts in specific decks. I played a Computer Spec because I really just like stuff like that. I wasn't really much of a control player, so Scramble Switch didn't do a lot for me. But sure. Definitely, Computer Search was the nuts. I love that card.
Yeah, but like it's a nice mechanic to have, and every set has continued to introduce a new set of 3 Radiant Pokemon. It started off with it started with Greninja, Heatran, and Hawlucha.
So
those are the 3 I think.
Hawlucha was great.
Yeah.
But the problem with Hawlucha, I don't think Hawlucha is bad. The problem is it was printed alongside Greninja, and that card is just not okay. It's a very good card. The fact that you could just discard to draw. Discard your energy to draw, that is just exactly what Water wants to be doing. Between Melanie, to get that energy, attach it to one of your V Pokemon and draw 3 cards and accelerate my energy, and Greninja enables that and got me 2 cards on its own. Oh yeah, they're going to knock it out eventually. That's great, but that's fine. All you really need is like 1 or 2 concealed card activations, and you're kind of setting up your whole deck for the rest of the game. Heatran, was a card they printed, so that's cool.
Yeah, there was a printer ink used on that.
It could do a lot of damage in a fringe set of circumstances.
Yeah, you probably need to set it up quite a bit.
Trust me, dude. I'm like, this guy can do like 280 damage if you do this. I'm talking about it with my friends, and they're like, it sure can.
Yeah. Greninja is so good that even non-water decks play it. It's not like, and I do think there's something, while we're talking about it, do you feel, Jason, that water is maybe a little better than most other types?
So you have less of a history in Pokemon than me.
Yes, I do.
So we have had this in the past with stuff like fire. When we had Welder in the format, oh my god. Attaching 2 fire energy to your Pokemon off a support or item was unhinged. Like, it is degenerate to the point that fire was super good when we had stuff like Blacephalon in the format and things like that. So there has always been when we had Dark Patch the first time around with Darkrai EX and stuff like that. We've always had Tapu Lele GPX, stuff like that. We've always had these cards that would push a specific color in typing or into the forefront. And then as the format evolves deeper into the formatting, we start to see these other decks. Before Water was really good this time around, it wasn't that bad. Psychic was definitely dominant between Rapid Strike Malamar. Fog Crystal was a big enabler for a lot of that. Sure. Just either getting a Pokemon or getting that energy was nuts. And then obviously Fusion Strike Mew is just nuts. Like, bonkers. You want to talk about drawing cards and going through your deck and just power tablet, Meowletta knockout, stuff like that. Just absolutely having really the kind of distilled degenerate versions of the game that was like that. So Water is definitely super pushed. I do think that it's gotten better over time, but definitely for ease of access, Water is definitely where you want to be.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I figured there was some sort of cyclical nature to it, whereas just every now and then there's just like a type that's pushed stronger than the others. It is a little weird to me looking at it from someone who, I mean, like I said, Pokemon has their own game design sensibilities, right? And their own priorities and their own things they're doing. Like, I really think they prioritize theme over a lot of other things a lot of the time. So it's like, okay, they're going to print Irida, they're going to print Melanie. Like, what are they going to make those do? They're going to support Water, right? Like, because that's their gym leaders that supported those types or whatever. Or Irida's a little different, but like, that's the point. So, it's, and I do think that they don't always like sit down and go like, okay, well, hang on, Water's really good right now, so maybe let's not print this. It's just more like, well, we're printing this trainer because it's the one that makes sense, and they have to print. They're not going to print their set based on with Brilliant Stars, or sorry, based on no, not Brilliant Stars, but Legends Arceus stuff, and they're not going to print like Origin Form, Dialga, and Palkia, right? They're going to do it, right? So because they have this sort of like requirement to keep up with the Pokemon games and the Pokemon themes and everything, you just end up with right now Water getting like tons of stuff that just happens to be really good. And and I assume that, I mean, your welder thing, I don't know why they printed that card. I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it goes to show that, I will never truly understand the design philosophy of Pokemon. And nor do I really care to at this point. But it does kind of this ebb and flow, and you're right. They're going to print their marquee Pokemon from that game. Well, what are they going to do? They're going to try to make it, attractive and flashy and playable. So What do? They're going to build stuff around it to make it flashy and playable. It doesn't help that they put characters that people are drawn to, characters with alternate arts that just look awesome that people are going to want to have anyway. So, it definitely goes hand in hand between the consumer part of the game and the player part of the game and actually playing it.
Yeah, you can't get away with like printing Arceus and making him like not good, right? It's like, It's kind of like you're printing Palkia Origin Form, making him not good. So they're always going to do that, but that's the weird part in my brain. There's just like a little twitch that happens and I'm like, okay, stop making Water support cards. It's good enough. We don't need more of them right now, but that doesn't necessarily matter to them all the time. And honestly, it's not like that, like, is a huge negative for how the game plays or whatever. It's just kind of like part and parcel what comes with playing Pokemon, I think.
Absolutely. It does make it, if your favorite Pokemon is Charizard or something, less exciting to want to play going into a format where somebody's going to be like, 480 damage for 2 energy. You're like, that just my whole deck is dead. Thank you. Cool. I had a great engaging game experience with you.
They
stuff
could
like that.
Revamp the weakness system.
I'm actually of the camp that I'm fine with weakness.
Really? All right.
It's fine. Well, but I also think I have Stockholm syndrome with it, and I've been playing with it for so long. Fair. It's like, okay, well, it's fine. It's fine. Because every time we've had rule changes in the past, I get, why do you mean I can't play a supporter turn 1? Stuff like that.
Every time I've been playing this year too, and I take the first turn or something, and I go to play supporter. I'm like, oh, I wish I could, and then I go, no, wait, no, I don't wish anyone could play a supporter first turn.
I remember I was like, they're ruining the game. I'm never gonna. And then like a couple months in, we were like, oh, this is fine. Like, it's fine. It's really not that bad. It sucks. Like sometimes you're like, oh, I whiffed my supporter on turn 1 and turn 2, and my opponent just went second and set up, and I'm just like, boss's orders. All right, pack them up, but it's better than the previous of just kind of vomiting everything out before your opponent gets even a chance to do anything, like literally draw a card for the turn. So again, it's just growth of a game and trying new things to see if it works competitively, because that is a big part of the game's longevity as well, is going to be how competitive viable it is. They could print Pokemon cards till we're cold in the ground 100 years from now. But if the game isn't competitively viable, they're not achieving their full potential. And I think they've realized that as a creator of the trading card game, and have, after putting so many resources into it, to keep a competitive game in the long term. And I think these fundamental rule changes are fine, except don't mess with weakness. But that's fine.
Okay.
Just leave it alone.
I think I have a different take on that very last part than you.
It's fine. It's fine. We're allowed to have a difference of opinion. That's fine.
Yes, absolutely. So the set that follows Astral Radiance was Pokemon Go. This was an exciting set, and then not really that exciting of a set, I think, shortly afterwards.
So these filler sets that are like the celebration sets and stuff like that, right? They are not meant to be these end all be all monster Pokemon, although we've had them in there, like with Charizard VMAX when we had them the first time and stuff like that. But they printed Pokestop, and that card is just on paper
that's
insane.
That's a card.
Like this stadium it's a house. And you were a big advocate of rocks for a while. You were jamming that. Rocks you were jamming that, dude. Yep, you were all about that life. And I loved that archetype. After a while, I did not love that archetype. I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? Soul Rock, Soul Rock, Soul Rock, Soul Rock. Stop. And you're just like waiting and waiting and waiting. And you're like, cool.
I was face palming.
You have a good deck trainer. And then you hit him with the smiley face.
Oh my god. Yeah. Pokemon, I totally get that. I get that Pokemon Go wasn't meant to be like a major set, but I do feel like there's a missed opportunity there, because I feel like they could have leaned more into Pokemon Go and like made it a more exciting thing where like, I guess I just don't understand releasing Pokemon Go saying, hey, if you play Pokemon Go, come try the trading card game. And then not making every card, like I'm serious. This should have been like Final Fantasy TCG artwork. Like literally just, I want it to be the Pokemon that I'm trying to catch in Pokemon Go.
Literally do a screenshot from the dang phone thing. It doesn't really matter. It's fine. That's what the people wanted.
Yeah. Instead, I want that. And I want these to be like, then I buy a bunch of Pokemon Go and I'm like, wow, I have a good deck. And it's not just rocks.
It's not just rocks and then pulling the sweet the Mewtwo and stuff like that. But I think it was great. I really like how they incorporated the Go codes into the game. I thought that was really cool, because what it did achieve there was that crossover. The problem once we got that crossover is the cards they printed were just not very exciting, unfortunately. And I think that, like you said, that's a definite missed opportunity. If they would have really knocked it out of the park with some really marquee cards that were playable versus just cool cards, they could have really kept maybe some more of that crossover and momentum. I still think it was cool for what it was. It was definitely just a subset. It was not meant for you to go dump a ton of time and product into, but it definitely has some cool cards that people are still playing. It was nice for them to finally branch into it. I'm just disappointed they didn't really dig their heels into it a bit more.
It does have Radiant, Charizard, Blastoise, and Venusaur, which were very cool cards to print. And my most recent deck I've been playing has been Superior, and I do not like Radiant Charizard because of the weakness thing.
And I'm glad you mentioned Radiant Charizard, and I completely slipped my mind. I thought it was the next set for some reason, but then it was Go. Radiant Charizard is a house. What a wonderful card. And I think it's a really great design card. Like, I think the card itself is fantastic. I like the benefit of the card. Weakness obviously is a bit of a big deal, especially when you're dirtling around with Superior.
Yeah, let me
Blastoise and
dirtle.
Venus,
Come on.
and that's okay. That's the beauty of this game, right? I have
Yes.
played so many janky decks. I'm known for playing junk. They'll go, that's a Toro deck when they'll talk about locals, and then they'll send me a list, and I'm like, oh, you guys don't think that highly of me that I would play this. And then next week I'm sleeving that up. I bought it for like 35 cents on TCG Player, and I'm doing dumb stuff. And I really like Radiant Venusaur. I think that card's awesome. I wish it
Yeah, it's
had
cool.
more of a home in the
Yes.
design space of Radiant cards. It is a really cool, as we get further down the line, I've been messing around with the basic Hisuian Arcanine, and that is a really cool card with it, because if you have an empty card hand, he does more damage. At the end of your turn, you gas it back up with Radiant Venusaur's ability. So it's really cool, right?
Yeah.
And I think that they really did a great job on the 3 Radiant Pokemon for the set. And it was nice for them to do Charizard, Venusaur, and Blastoise. They're marquee cards.
For sure.
People really like them. But yeah, I definitely think there's a bit of a disparity between, Charizard and the rest, but that's been thematic most of the time across the card game. We've had a couple times where Blastoise was just better, back when we had Deluge and kind of like your Rain Dance style decks where you just attach when we had the new version with Deluge and stuff like that. But Venusaur, I still don't think ever got the best end of the stick, so it was nice to kind of give him a really cool card.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's just important. That is the one part of Go where I think the opportunity wasn't missed. It's like, that's, if you're gonna put the Radiant Pokemon in there, then you're gonna put Charizard, Blastoise, Venusaur. It's like, it's just your opportunity to put those in. And like, other than, I guess they could have done Radiant Pikachu. That what a cool secret rare slot. Like back when they did Dark Raichu, you remember back those days, like the additional card. Wouldn't it have been sweet if there was just this like also surprise Radiant Pikachu or something in there?
It'd be cool. And kind of to piggyback off that, what they did with Ditto was awesome.
Oh, the Ditto thing was really cool too.
What's super sick, totally. Except every Ditto I've opened after you peel the sticker off has been scratched or ruined. So hopefully they'll find a way down the line to improve that. But you're right, that would have been really cool. To just have, like, you get to the very last pack, you're like, oh, sick, I got, or even you go even one step further and make it like a marquee character's Pokemon. Like from, some and stuff like that, and really kind of dig into it. But I think that is things that they should continue to explore. Stuff like back even before we talk about like Detective Pikachu and stuff like that. That was just a lot of fun. I think when they do a lot of fun stuff in the game, it's a really cool way to get new eyes into it and hook them that way.
Yeah, totally. Following Pokemon Go, we had Lost Origin. Now the interesting thing about this set was it brought back a mechanic that hadn't been seen in a little while. I don't know how long, because you would know better than me, but the Lost Zone came back in this set.
Yeah, so we got the Lost Zone back. We haven't been without the Lost Zone for a while. We had it in the Sun and Moon era. Okay. And one of my favorite cards, Girafarig, was a card that would take 2 cards, 1 energy. I think it was 1. No, it's a DC. I'm pretty sure 2 energy. I might be wrong, but I know what it does. It takes 2 cards from your opponent's discard pile and puts them in the Lost Zone.
Ooh,
love that card.
Yeah,
love that guy. So it was nice to see the Lost Zone come back, and I think the way they handled the Lost Zone is fantastic. They made so many cool cards. Now, do I think the Comfy engine is a little insane? Yeah.
Yep.
But we got a lot of cool, like, using the Lost Zone. I didn't like how they did it a long time ago, using the Lost Zone as discard pile number 2. I do like filling a bunch of junk in my Lost Zone to do more stuff. I love that. And I love thinning cards.
Yeah. I totally agree. I wasn't sure what to think of it going into the set, and then when I started cracking some online and then like messing around, seeing how the decks played, I totally agree that like making it this side resource that you're trying to build in those decks that are built around doing that, which enabled then like Cramorant's attacks for free, or Giratina's just like you lose ability.
Yeah, you just lose the game. Yeah.
That kind of stuff is actually really fun and interesting to play around. Now, I'm also with you. The Comfy engine, like, it's crazy. It feels so okay. Again, vintage Magic, right? Like, if you watch me playing this, I am playing the paradoxical outcome with all your like Moxin like vintage deck, where I'm just going like, okay, Comfy, look at the top 2 cards. One in my hand, one in the Lost Zone. Other Comfy on bench. Scoop up net Comfy. Bring out Comfy. Use the ability. 1 in my hand, 1 in the Lost Zone. Okay, play the other Comfy. Scoop up net Comfy. Others comfy out, use the ability again. Like, you just keep doing that. You just keep doing it over and over again. They're like, now I'll use Colress in the, 3 in hand, 2 or 2 in hand, 3 in the last zone or whatever. I can't remember which one. I think it was 2 and 3.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it feels really nutty when you have that nuts hand and you have everything that you're doing. And the problem is that it's so easy to get to the nuts hand, and the engine itself helps you get to the nuts hand the whole time too.
Yeah, but the upside to all of that is I still think its end game payoff isn't the best. While Giratina does say you just lose a guy, right? Your guy gets knocked out. Okay, Kramer attacking for free. It's an attack, right? It's gonna knock out a basic, but a lot of the meta game right now isn't like your stage 1s and your stage 2. You're gonna tank a hit. When it goes off early, it's obviously nuts because you just get so far off the blocks. The longer the game goes, I feel, against these lost box style decks, the more it goes in your favor. Yeah. They start to gas out of resources because they kind of went super hard, similar to how Fusion Strike would do, where they were just like, all right, I'm going to gas through this deck, try to get all my Fusion Strike energy, maybe dig for these last tablets I need to knock that out. Well, what happens when they don't hit it? They've just burned through so many resources. It's all in their bin. And same with Lost Zone. They've Lost Zoned a ton of stuff. Yeah, they can attack with Freeward Camera. They might get the attack with Giratina. But I do think it's fair while just being tedious for me as a player.
Sure. Yeah, and I think you're totally right too. The deck I was playing a lot during this was Gudra, which is honestly my favorite deck that I've played in Pokemon TCG. Still is that way. It is extremely fun to me. This is maybe like, you mentioned earlier, you're kind of this like brain dead red deck wins kind of player. I like this Gudra thing where I'm going to sit there and I'm going to go, you can do whatever you want. You're going to do like 6 damage to me. It just doesn't matter at all. Now, the problem is there are ways to play around it, which actually that's not the problem. The nice thing is there are ways to play around it, so it's not oppressive or anything. And things like that Giratina deck were a problem for me because they would just go, all right, I will shred you then, and then your thing's done.
Yeah,
so
and then you just lose.
Doesn't matter. Or the other thing was is Spiritomb, I think, is the one that they put a million damage counters on things that ignores my ability to take no damage from stuff.
Spiritomb has notoriously always had a card that's just been like, hey, I'm going to put damage counters on myself to put them on you or something like that. Back when we had the Spiritomb, what that would put deal damage equal number of damage counters on him, and then its ability was put a damage counter on himself.
Sure.
So we had decks like that in the past. So Spiritomb has always been this kind of, hey, I'm just going to dump all this crap on you kind of Pokemon. And you're right, that does kind of play around that Gudra strategy. And yeah, I could appreciate Gudra, but boy, did I hate playing against Gudra. Like cards like Gudra and Cheryl. Don't get me started on Cheryl. I could talk for an hour about
Jason,
how that card.
I'm only playing decks you hate right now. Gudra and now my superior Cheryl.
I think superior Cheryl is less egregious than Gudra. But sure. I think it is cool to have that avenue, right? In a game where you're just trying to set up and be hyper aggressive. What about the guy who just gets set up and just is like, all right, yeah, sure, you do that. Give him a little pat on the head. And I'm going to go now and heal all that up, and we'll just keep doing this till you just get tired or I win.
It comes down to I tend to gravitate towards playing control decks in games, and Pokemon's control is different than other games because, as we mentioned, it's a very proactive game, right? So all of my control methods my Gudra method is like, okay, well, I'm going to make it so your attacks just do very little damage to me, and then just like, okay, I've taken a couple hits. Now I'm going to switch into my other Gudra. Now you have to hit this one. Like, whatever. And the superior one, for people who aren't aware, is I think it's a hilarious deck. It's a deck where your goal is to put 2 to 3 is really fun, superiors V-stars on the board that each have a tool equipped to them called Leafy Camo Shield, which says this can't be affected by your opponent's supporters. Which the only purpose of that is it means they can't selectively boss's orders out, force you to, it's a gust of wind for original players, but force you to put a certain Pokemon out. So you get to choose what's out for you at any given moment. That's the important part, right? And then all you're doing is you are having a superior out that has enough HP through some other methods, just make sure it can take a hit. It takes whatever hit you want it to take. And then on your next turn, you use its attack, and you move it has an attack that then moves all of its energy to another Pokemon. So you have a superior out, it attacks, then it moves all its energy to one superior. Then the superior that's out takes the hit. Then your next turn, it has free retreat, by the way. So then you free retreat in, the other one, like maybe your third one at this point, use the attack, move the energy to your second one, move the energy to your third one. It's really hard to explain in a podcast, I realize. But the point is, once you get energy on your other superiors, you then, you have an energy on the superior that has no damage. Then you play this Cheryl supporter, which says all of your Pokemon with any damage on them, all your V Pokemon lose their damage, and then discard any energy on Pokemon healed this way. But you moved all your energy to the superior that hasn't taken damage yet. And then you loop that over and over again. Just keep moving energy, taking damage, moving energy, taking damage, Cheryl. Moving energy, taking damage, moving energy, taking damage, Cheryl. Every time until your opponent goes, wow, this sucks, and then loses.
Yeah, and it reminds me of the, hey, I'm going to put a ball in this cup, and then I'm going to spin all the cups around, and you never pick the cup that has the ball in it. That's what the Cheryl deck feels like.
That is what it is.
And it's great that you enjoy playing that. One of these episodes, I have to send you one of those really crazy control lists. One of my locals, Brendan, plays a lot. He is notorious for bringing whatever dirtily deck that you're going to hate, that's going to either get all of his resources back, get rid of your resources, and we just don't bring that to locals. We're 6 people trying to play Pokemon on a Friday night. Get that crap out of here. But it lends to people's play styles, and if you like control, you could really go deep down that rabbit hole, especially with some of the decks that have been successful, like the Mewtwo V Union decks. V Union cards in general, which we didn't even touch on, I thought for the longest time they were just going to be unplayable.
They're not. I've been crushed by some of
them. They
them.
are really not, and it's because now that people have gotten adventurous enough to build these kind of pseudo control lists or pseudo aggro lists with them, in normal format. If we were talking about expanded, Pikachu V Union is actually broken. And expanded is more for anybody who's played any other games. It's like if standard is we are on a rotation, so X amount of sets are legal, right? We're legal to a certain regulation letter right now in Pokemon. And expanded is XY to where we are now. And we have a lot of cards to play with, and it's a lot of degeneracy. You want to talk about really going down a rabbit hole of people and hiding in a back alley playing Pokemon and doing hey, you guys want to come over here and play some expanded? That can get to some really scary stuff where you're playing against people just winning the game on turn 1, like actually game 1, either donking you out or locking you out of the game using items, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that really lends to, are you a control player, are you aggro player? Stuff like that. Pokemon really can do that. And don't play Cheryl at your locals or Goodra. If you
I would 100% play Goodra or Superior at my locals, and I would love it every moment.
I think you should. And it's a cool little archetype. It's nice to have a control deck in a game that feels like it's about dealing the biggest numbers possible.
Yeah. I think that's important to have. So Lost Origin, overall, I think a really cool set. I like the things they added with it in general. I do agree. Comfy is just like a weird, it's just weird that it exists. I guess it feels like it's just so, the thing about it is it's just so obvious. Like you see the card and you go, oh, I get immediately how this is an insane engine for setting this up. And it's also clearly the best way to do it. But I think again, this just lends me to being like, I don't quite understand Pokemon's design team, because if I were designing Lost Origin, there would have been like, okay, every type is going to have its like thing that does Lost Zone, and we're going to make them different based on how we think the types check. Like Fire is going to move cards from the discard to Lost Zone, so you have to be like aggressively like discarding cards. So I would have thought that way about it, right? But I'm not a Pokemon game designer. Clearly, I don't understand. I'm a different kind of game designer, I guess.
Yeah, and we are game designers, remind you.
We're not. We're not. I would be a different kind of game designer.
But we're just guys on the internet talking about what we enjoy. But what I wish they would have did with the Lost Zone is more Lost Zone hosers. I really don't like, and Pokemon is kind of notorious for this until recently. When we got Path of the Peak, I almost had a stroke. I was like, are you kidding me? This card's nuts. Temple to Sinnoh, this card's nuts.
Yeah.
And Temple to Sinnoh, I think, is a criminally underplayed card, but I also think that's because Path is played, and Special Energy is so good to want to play too. But to go further down to the point I was trying to make, I wish there were more cards that punish your opponent for loading up their Lost Zone. Maybe even at a V-Star kind of thing, or like a break point where it does it once, not all the time. Because once they fill their Lost Zone, they can't get the cards back out. So you don't want a card that just says, while they have X amount, you always do this, right? But again, I think it lends to, I think you and I come from the Magic background too, where we're like, oh, colors should all have access to this thing, but in their own way.
Yeah.
versus the Pokemon has never been like that.
It just hasn't ever been a priority for them.
Right.
It just doesn't, like, again, they just have different priorities. Like,
Yeah.
who cares? Who cares
Absolutely.
about that? Like, yeah, this is what Comfy does. If you want to play Awesome, you play Comfy. That's how it works.
That's it. You play these flowers and you like it into your fish. That's it. Or your whatever a Cramorant is. What's the thing?
Bird.
A bird.
It's called a bird, Jason.
It's called a bird. Birds aren't even real. All right.
Yeah, and man, I don't know.
It's a pelican. It's a pelican.
Is it
It has the
pelican?
little mouthy thing, right? Kinda. Someone can correct me. Make sure you correct me when you watch this. Put it in the comments.
No, we're stupid.
We're gonna look for it.
It's a cormorant. That's why its name is Cramorant.
I don't even know what a cormorant is.
It's a
I live
bird.
in Florida. I obviously know that now. Like, you got to understand, is it native to your land? Because I don't see them down here.
Yeah, actually, it is native to where I am in the upper Midwest. We have cormorants.
Yeah, typically when I park my alligator when I get home, I don't see them. When I get home every day, I haven't seen a cormorant. I've seen a lot of seagulls. We got a lot of those.
Well, they have seagull Pokemon too. They just don't interact with the
we
Lost.
We got Wingull and Pelipper, man.
Don't you wish that Pelipper's a pelican? I don't know why you call Cramorant a pelican.
Because Wingull evolves into Pelipper. Why does a seagull evolve into a pelican? That doesn't make sense. Seagulls just get bigger.
Yeah, I guess I don't know.
Eat your food.
Can we talk about the real controversy right now, Jason? Why are there 3 Pokemon now that are based on, I'm just going to combine them. I know they're different, but crocodile/alligators. Why we already have 3 Pokemon based on that? You muted yourself to respond to me.
Okay. Because Florida is taking over.
Oh.
That has to be it, right? No, I don't know, but they're all cool as hell.
They are.
That's the sick part. So, like, I think they found out alligators make sick Pokemon. Like, look at all the alligators and crocodiles we've had throughout. They've all been pretty dope. We've had Crocodile. We've had Feraligatr. We've Skeledirge now, and that thing's friggin' awesome. It's like a singing fire crocodile, dude. Like, what? Where did they just, like, they were like, all right, guys, I have this D100. And here we go. We're going to roll it 3 times. And now we have a pink, fluffy, bipedal thing with a hammer. All right, we got Tinkaton next. Let's keep going.
That does kind of feel like the design of Gen 9. And I'm here for it, actually.
It reminds me a lot of black and white design. And I love black and white's designs.
Yep,
like,
me too. Big Gen 5 fan.
Big Garbodor guy over here. What is this Pokemon? Oh, it's just a giant pile of trash. What is this? It's just keys. It makes me happy that I could think of, maybe I can get this non-branded water bottle to my right to be a Pokemon one day, and I'm hoping they're going to get there. But yeah,
I can't wait for the tripod Pokemon to show up.
Maybe we have one.
We might actually. I'm not sure.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know. There's been so many.
Okay, moving on. So yeah, Lost Origin, cool set, good set. I did enjoy it. We haven't seen it. Was Lost Zone only in Lost Origin though? Did they put anything in Silver Tempest with Lost Zone?
I don't recall. I don't think so. And real quick with Lost Zone, I think it was the first set since Brilliant Stars that really opened up a lot more of the metagame. In my opinion,
yeah,
it may differ from other people, but I felt like we kind of spun our wheels for a bit, and now finally we're like, okay, cool. Here's some more new archetypes. Obviously, that comes with a new mechanic or a revisited mechanic, but it also opened up a lot of things that we weren't really playing as much before, or even thought of to play, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, definitely. Silver Tempest is, I think, different than that.
It sure is. It's a Lugia V-Star or bust.
Yes, all the other things are kind of bad. Like
Archeops, we got Archeops, and he's nuts. That card is, I don't even think is real how insane that card is. Archeops with the energy. But you're right, in terms of marquee Pokemon, right? Like if I'm like Alolan Vulpix is not it. It's a great looking card.
Yep.
What I really like about Pokemon is how they're doing the lenticular cards to LGS. I really love the Lugia Vulpix lenticular card. It looks awesome.
Yeah, those are cool.
They really knocked it out of the park with some of the art this set, but unfortunately it's really just, in my opinion, and again, this is coming from somebody, I play with people who are competitive, but I'm not a big competitive player myself. I'm more of an organizer professor and somebody who enjoys the game. But in terms of my breadth of knowledge and what I see, it's been a lot of what the biggest takeaway is. Lugia V Star is a house. It is a very good card, but really outside of that, you just got a lot of other cards.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't find Silver Tempest to be a particularly inspiring or impressive set. Now, one thing I can't escape without talking about in this conversation is just that Pokemon is one of these games where there's a Japanese metagame ahead of the English metagame, and then we get the sets a few months later. And I am not a big fan of that style of game in general, just because I like to have, look, I'm not gonna like be topping a tournament with like super crazy rogue deck just because I drop out round 3 every time I play a lot of like a major tournament. But I want to believe that I can come up with something cool and unique and innovative. And it's not that I can't do it in Pokemon, but it's harder because a lot of the metagame has been pretty well explored a lot of the time. And like, if I go, ooh, I feel like this card's just on the edge of being good, I just type it into Google and like, there's like a million, he's like, yeah, here's how you make this deck. It's all right. Yeah. Like that's what it ends up being. And like, that takes the wind out of my sails a little bit. I don't know how you feel about it, Jason.
For me, a big example of that was the Stage 1 Zoroark we got not too long ago, that when he's in the discard pile, you could swap him from another Pokemon in your discard pile. That's another Stage 1. To me, that card, I was like, wow, this lets you do so much cool stuff. And then we looked ahead and you're like, it's cool, but we never really got all the support we needed to make it great. And that would kind of really deflate you. And in recent memory, because we're finally going to get caught up. Like, we're getting to the point where eventually the end game is that we're all going to be on the same thing. Those paths are eventually going to line up. But I mean,
is that actually with the plan? The plan
that is the tentative plan.
I wasn't
to
aware
me,
of
it's been the plan for 5 years.
Yeah,
so think about it that way. We are a lot closer now than we were.
Sure.
To put it in perspective, there was a time where they were playing with all these black and white cards, and we were past it. And it's like, oh, their metagame is so different because they have access to cards we don't even have access to anymore versus cards that are coming out.
Sure.
So it is fun to watch the Japanese events with the newer stuff, but it really, for me as a player, and I know for some people, it kind of takes the wind out of the sails of creativity, because you don't get, unless you're really at the echelon of the top players, you don't get to be that guy like, I can think of this deck. Because a lot of that recipe was already made for you, which for me is a lot of really enjoying the game, is playing something that nobody else is going to play. But when people have access to the stuff way before you, it's like, okay, well, all that stuff's been explored, and now I'm just net decking in a sense, which net deck, if that's your thing, I net deck to this day. Yes. That's why people build decks for you to play, because they want you to play and they want you to play something fun and they want to get their content out there. It's not a bad thing. But the brewer in me sometimes is disappointed with that in terms of how Pokemon does it, with sets already being out or being played. Yeah,
and for me, it's like, I find building decks to be an outlet for creativity as well. And it's like, I can do it, but I know that I'm just going to do a worse job than, like, because I haven't tested, like in the best case scenario, if I'm going to sit down and brew up a deck for a game that has like a metagame that's ahead of time traveled ahead of us, like the Japanese one in this one. If I'm going to sit down and try and build one of those decks, in my best case scenario is I'm going to come up with a list that is like the iteration 1 deck of the list I could go find online, which then went through playing a bunch of tournaments and talking to other people. And so like, I'm going to come up with something where like, it's basically that same deck. It's just worse because I didn't include this one card and I had 4 copies of this one. I should only had 2, and like that kind of stuff, the stuff that you find as you iterate on a deck, playing it and talking to other people about it. And like, so then I just, it's hard for me to just go, well, you know what? I'm just going to build it anyway. Cause I can just go, well, instead I could spend 5 minutes, get the list, and it's better. And then I can move on with my day and do something more interesting that where like the results can be more interesting to me to have, you know?
And I agree. And a lot of that, at least on a local scale, it's nice to have that. And then you could be like, okay, I'm going to season it to taste based on my metagame.
Yeah, for sure.
But at the same time, it kind of defeats some of the brewer creativity, I think, is taken away. I still think there are plenty of content creators who come up to stuff that I won't think of.
Yes.
There are tons of better brewers, tons of better deck builders, but even in my pea brain of deck building, I like to have some feeling like I'm doing something nobody has thought of or Fringe has thought of, whereas people are like, oh, I've already put this out there for everybody to kind of take a part of.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. I definitely agree with that. And it does feel different to me than like any TCG, like because you could sit down and argue that like any TCGs like that, because like there's the people who are try hard playing the game right away and putting out content immediately. So it's like I can sit down with the newest set of like My Hero or something and I can go online, like someone's already put up a deck profile for the new All Might or whatever, and like I can just copy that. But it's like the difference is the amount of time that deck has been able to be played and iterated on, and has like, like when a new set's coming out for Pokemon, you can go online and find a website that's just like, yeah, here are all the important cards you should watch for, and here are a bunch of deck lists for them, and then it ranks them. It's like, this is competitive, this is casual, like, because they just know already, and it's like, you don't even have that illusion of that excitement of being like, this might be a good deck. It's just like, they just tell you right now, it's not going to be. And that's the part that's deflating.
But the beauty of that, at least with Pokemon, you can play whatever 60 card pile you want on PCGO and still have a good time.
Yes, that
truly
is true.
do.
Yeah,
That's the beauty of that, at least. So those lists do serve a purpose. They're for you to load up at a local or jam with some friends or get on PCGO, and you could even have success on the ladder, and do well on the ladder and get all your unlocks. Or I don't know yet with how it'll translate to the new ranking system with live, but it's still a lot of fun to go and play those casual decks. So don't let that dissuade you. But it does, if you are a brewer or in that brewer's mindset, at least for me, and I know you kind of echoed that sentiment, it does kind of take the wind out of your sails on that.
I will say that despite feeling that way, I still have played Pokemon this year online, and I have enjoyed playing Pokemon that way. It's just like it's changed how I interact with the game in particular, right? I don't get into it to the same level I do other TCGs, because I don't have that part is kind of missing for me. Instead, I sit down, I look through when the new set's coming out. I look through, like for Silver Tempest, I look through like, which of these cards look interesting. Lugia's obviously looks good. It might be fun to play a good deck if I get the cards for it. Yeah, Regidrago's kind of cool. Like, the Superior thing's really weird. Like, I'm kind of curious about that one. And then I open my packs and whatever I had, like, yeah, it looks like, I only got like one Lugia, so maybe I'll try building one of these other ones. And I just sat down. That's how I engaged with it. It was a very different way than how I would engage with a new TCG, where I would normally spend like 2 weeks prior to launch or more, just like every day being like, wake up in the morning, like, all right, let me come up with a new list. Let me try and mess around a little bit. So I enjoy that part a little bit more. And I'm missing that part, but it hasn't stopped me from engaging and enjoying myself playing Pokemon. Like, it just changes how I do it.
The ease of access, I think, is a lot better. If you want to just jump in, play some games, it's a lot easier to find any list for anything you're looking to play. When it comes to itching the brewer itch, and building and brainstorming, I don't get that from this game personally. I know people that do, and I have people locally who really try to Frankenstein that stuff. But it's hard for me to come up with that urge when it's going to be 55 out of the same 60.
Yeah, I do wonder if I don't wonder really. I guess I'm sure there are players out there who do not care at all about the brewing thing. And for them, it's just like, it probably doesn't matter. They just want to engage with the game, play the game itself. Like are probably just very happy that they can sit down before the set even comes out. This is a benefit, right? Like if you're looking ahead to the Japanese metagame, you can look at whatever's coming in the next set. Whatever people are saying is good, and you can go, okay, I'm going to need these cards from the current sets, and you just go pick everything up. As soon as the set releases, you grab the new cards, and you're ready to go. Your deck's already done, and I'm sure there are people who really enjoy that being an aspect of it too.
Absolutely, because those players, they're going to be about the ones that get a mastery with those cards versus building, and really just want to dig into that deck, find the best way to play it, figure out the best way to play it up in a matchup, and maybe are not the best at figuring out the exact 60 and need that kind of foot up. This is where I'm going to go with it, jam a bunch of games with it. It's nice to have that ease of access, get those games in, and then figure out if, hey, this is for me, or maybe, maybe I'll feel comfortable moving these cards around, but don't feel comfortable doing it initially and rather just jam some games and have that blueprint for success going down the line, versus the real brewers either A, are at the very top of the game and have come up with some wild stuff or wild versions of decks, or B, are going to try to make those changes to either less success or maybe less excitement to themselves and others.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, that's a little aside, but that's Silver Tempest, which is Lugia and some other cards. So Jason, with all these releases, how do we feel about the metagame throughout the year for Pokemon? How's it been? How is it right now?
I honestly think it's fine. I don't think that it wasn't as bad of a spot as it was at the beginning of the year. I think before we got Arceus, I really was not enjoying myself. It was a lot of Fusion Strike. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Or your Urshifu decks. And then for me, I was like, this isn't just... And Urshi, if I'm an aggro player, right, you think I would love just being like, boom, discard these 2 energy, 5 billion to, or 122 your guys, right? But for me, it just was like, it wasn't the right... It didn't scratch that itch of like really high impact. It felt more like a control deck and aggressive shell. Like, cool, I'm going to blow up your 2 guys on the bench, take 4 prizes. And they're your techie guys. They're like your Dedenne V or GXs and stuff like that, right? Then this year, we've kind of by the point we're at now, I think I don't know if I would say it's in the healthiest spot, but I would say it's in. I feel like the metagame has been the most enjoyable for me personally, and a lot of other players for how it's been in a long time. And I think for me, that started at Lost Origins is when it really blossomed from just Arceus plus cards, the Mew decks, and then fringe other decks. Then now we have the Lost Zone variants. Now even further down the line, we have the crazy kind of standard control list and stuff like that. You know, there's a lot of really cool decks out there. I think that the more everyone finds out about the Crown Zenith cards, which, you know, is the next set, there's going to be a lot of excitement around maybe some new stuff there. It's still a little too early in the 8 ball to tell. At least me personally, I haven't dug into a ton of the spoilers yet. I've seen the EX cards that are coming down the line, and yes, you know, as we shift away, which again is kind of we'll touch on that at the end when we talk about the future. But I think the meta's in a pretty okay place. I'll be very excited for rotation. Can't wait for a rotation.
Why are you excited for that?
Well, why do you ask? Because I think Drizzile with the Shady Dealings Drizzile needed to go a long time ago. That card is so egregiously, I think, overpushed. A stage 1 that gets you essentially any card out of your deck is wild. Now, it's not any card out of your deck, but items and supporters turn into almost any card in your deck.
Yeah,
they enable so much. How about I play 3 Sobble turn 1? All I need is just one way to get a Drizzle. Now I have my whole bench set up, plus a card at the end to either set up for the next turn or further this turn. That was mind-boggling to me.
I don't understand how they...
I think it was short-sighted, because when that card first came out, not really many people were playing Drizzle or Inteleon at all.
Really?
And it was even this card, like, it was just not played. It was a bulk rare. Now go look up, go on TCG Player and see how much a Drizzle is.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, not anymore. We are starting to get the I haven't looked in a while, but if I were to, let's see, you know, interactive fun stuff. We're all learning together.
Yeah, no, I was just typing into.
But you know what I'm like, or even not even how much it might be right now, but look at its price history, right? This is an uncommon card.
Yeah.
Do I know how to spell it?
It was over $1 3 months ago.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, I mean, $1.
Whoa.
Yeah. Look at its past.
Yeah. Hey, here we go.
Like, you know what I mean?
It peaked at $4
for an uncommon.
Yeah.
For an uncommon, a base set.
Yeah.
Of a base set to have a $4 uncommon. It to me shows you kind of how over that it isn't a marquee Pokemon. Look at this stupid thing. It's like a dumb chameleon. Like, who cares about this thing? It looks dumb. It evolved, like, Inteleon's super cool. I mean, it's like, it's dope, but its middle evolutions are never really great.
They're always just kind of
but like Drizzle was just kind of like extremely overpushed. I think if it was a different card then into Shady Dealings Inteleon, I still think there's legs to it. It's just not as unfair. Working hard to a stage 2 Pokemon should be rewarded with an ability like Shady Dealings.
Yeah, I think
you should be rewarded at a top end for stage 2 Pokemon, because that's the core problem with the GX, EX era of this game. It's hard to play stage 2 Pokemon in the trading card game. It's just hard, because your stage 2 payoffs need to be astronomical to put the risk of just building up to this thing to do thing.
And for some reason, they don't want to give them in my opinion, enough HP. It's like they've pushed that number up from what I've seen in the past.
They have
pushed it up, but it still is like, yeah, they're still just getting knocked out so easily that it's like it's so hard to actually take advantage of their abilities sometimes. Like they sometimes do have good abilities and stuff, but it's like, yeah, but they just like die. Like they die immediately. And the reason why I'm sure Inteleon is so good is because it's a come into play ability. It's just like as soon as you play it, like boom, you get
getting
that
paid off. And not only that, Drizzle being 90 hit points is also just it completely nuts because it's a level ball target. So it's so consistent. You could just play it. I was playing you were playing Drizzle and you never even had a water attacker, right? You were just playing a Drizzle line Inteleon line to eventually sometimes you play Drizzle just to evolve into the quick shooting Inteleon.
Yeah.
You know, and just start putting damage counters out. And then I think it attacked with 2 colors synergy, the waterfall. So it could attack. So that's my biggest gripe with the metagame going into this year. With this year, I do think Drizzle's still very powerful, but I don't feel like it's like, it's as game altering because now we have other engines that are also just equally as powerful. I do think Drizzle is still the most powerful of them all due to ease of access, but Comfy now is like, oh, well, this card is just, I put it on the table and it's now doing things.
Can we talk about Scoop Up Net and like how it makes everything a problem?
I thought if we had competitive play, that Scoop Up Net would have probably been banned. I truly think because Scoop Up Net, your Sobble lines is the easiest, like first one, like, I guess I miss. I guess I'll just net this one in tutor anyway. And now I got it out of the active and I put my threat in the active or I just saved it. Like it's Scoop Up Net. Well, that's another card that skyrocketed, and for a long time I was selling piles of them for several dollars each. And when and I feel a hallmark a lot of trading card games, and even right now it's like a $3 card. Granted, Rebel Clash is an older set, right? But it's one of those things to me that you should not be your deck building pieces in the Pokemon game should really be your V-Stars. Those should be where you're spending all your money. Things that should have an ease of access need to have that ease of access in cards like Scoop Up Net. So eventually we got the trainers cool kits, which by the way, awesome product, especially for newer players. Find your newest trainer toolkit. Right now, we're about to have a rotation. Don't get a trainer's toolkit right now, or you're going to lose a lot of those cards and it's going to have value. But we'll eventually get them again. And but Scoop Up Net, jeez, no, thank you.
Yeah.
If I never see that card again, it would be too soon.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's like if you name any engine, it's like a part of it. It's like a part of what makes these decks work. And like, I guess you could make an argument that like, well, then you wouldn't have, we were just saying Arceus is so good because it gives an engine to so many decks and stuff. Like, yeah, so then we don't like Comfy engine is a lot worse. Drizzle engine is a lot worse. Still really good, but worse. The Rocks engine is worse without that. The Radiant Greninja is worse without that. It's like all those things. It resets powers. It lets you reuse, comes into play, things re-evolve to go to Drizzle again. Like it's it does a lot, but it just feels like this isn't the way. Like this isn't the way that this should be done.
I like the Magic Parallels drawing cards to this game. I don't like time walking. I don't like that for this game. And that's what I feel like cards like Scoop Up Net, it's like, oh, it's a mulligan within the game, right? Like, I guess I'll just try it again.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily a fan of that gameplay style. I think it lends to sometimes lazy deck building. When I'm like, I guess I just get the net and try one more time, or I just do this. And to touch on Arceus has a higher level of punishment for playing Arceus and Arceus V-Star versus putting Scoop Up Nets for my Drizzles on my deck. And I think that's the disparity between both of those cards, which is why I don't think people have a problem with Arceus versus having issues with cards like Drizzle and Scoop Up Net. The barrier of entry for both of those, it's a little bit riskier to play an Arceus V-Style because I could just punch it like for 2 prizes with a lot of decks. And, it wasn't hard to get that. Whereas you knock out a Drizzle, you took a prize, you're playing, and now you're probably putting yourself into a 7-prize game, which I don't know how familiar you are with that expression of a 7-prize Pokemon game.
I'm not actually.
Okay, so a 7-prize Pokemon game is, if you think about it, right, if we were playing a traditional game of Pokemon, I take a prize each time I knock out your Pokemon, right?
Yep.
Well, if I knock out a stage 1 Pokemon or stage 2 Pokemon, I still take a prize, but I'm still playing all these GX Pokemon. I'm making you take an extra prize because of my guys have 2 prizes versus 1. So there ends up being your prize you took really didn't matter in the long run. It's just like,
oh, right. Okay.
You're kind of just stretching the game out. It's like, okay, but you
the
still
kind of
have to do the
math
same thing.
I learned to do that math playing the games. Like, okay, wait, right now, like I need to let them take out a single prize one just
Exactly.
so that
It's
I get another
losses.
turn. Yeah.
So, that's what stage 1s do. They turn you into these 7 prize games or acceptable losses games, and it's like not as bad of an impact when you lose a single prize Pokemon versus losing a 2 prizer. That's why people are going for your Crobats, your Dedennes, your Tapu Lele GXs. They are not gimmick, because Crobat actually, out of all of those, well, and some Tapu Leles, but Crobat, now there's Crobat VMAX that people were playing in specific decks, and especially like we didn't talk about, but like the Weezing decks with Crobat and stuff like that. There's a lot of other fringe decks we didn't talk about that have legs, and we finally got a Pokemon to bail out our setup cards like our Crobats and stuff, but you still get that up there with a boss or even a cheeky escape rope. That's 2 free prizes. Whereas if you rope my Sobble, it's like, if I got that Drizzile or I have another Sobble in play, you got me. Oh well, I'm just gonna set it all back up.
Yeah,
I'm gonna rod that back into my deck.
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
And how'd you get the rod? Well, I
got it off Drizzle. I just tutored it if I needed it, and even then, it's like you probably didn't need to. But yeah.
It's Scoop Up Net should be like, you should have to like take a prize. Your opponent should get a prize when you.
So Scoop Up Net is a non-issue if cards like Drizzle didn't exist.
Yeah, that's
because it's innocuous, right? But we've had cards in the past, and we have a card right now. We have Charon's Care, right? It gets a colorless Pokemon back to our hand. Back then, we had AZ, which was similar to that, but I think it was only, or we had Acerola too, way back when. And these cards that kind of like got my Pokemon back in my hand. The thing that they all have in common is that they're all your supporter for the turn.
Right.
Scoop Up Net is not. It's a lot hard. It's like, you look at Sharon's Care like, oh, this is insane. It saves my Arceus. Well, what am I going to do after that? I better have a threat in play. I don't get to play my supporter this turn. Well, Scoop Up Net means I just get to play my Drizzle again and get that supporter. and now I'm blowing you out. So that I think that's the problem with Scoop Up Net. If this card was a supporter, it would need a little more text on it to be worthy of even playing, I think, in my opinion. Whereas at an item, that's nuts. And I think that's partially why they're making the item change coming up, because I think items are actually extremely powerful.
I definitely want to talk about that in a little bit when we talk about looking forward to things. I wanted to know, Jason, so there's a good take on the metagame. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that, or if there's any other like newsworthy moments of the year that you want to talk about in 2020.
I mean, the only really thing I wanted to touch on, and I don't want to harp too onto it because it's negative. I do not really enjoy a lot of the cheating that came out this year with actual play coming back. There was way too much garbage going on. I was not in the room, so I did not see any of these things happen. But the fact that so much has come out with people having poor integrity in playing their game, or just blatantly cheating, is disappointing, especially when we're finally coming back to having local and competitive gameplay again. It really puts a sour spot when I'm trying to teach new people. It's like, why? When I can go to a big tournament and this guy's been playing for a while, he's going to get away with doing X, Y, Z. And I'm not saying anything from poor judging or anything. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people who are just coming into play the game in a way that is either cheating or with poor integrity. And that was pretty disappointing part of the season. And I don't want to invalidate a lot of people's accomplishments who did very well, but it's definitely a part of the game this year that I really, really can't jive with. And it's really hard to want to have people go play competitively when people who had reputable names went out and cheated and were people that people respected. That's a bummer.
That's always a shame to hear about in any TCG. It's something that unfortunately just comes with the territory of competitive games. It's like you can't escape it, whether it's TCGs or video games, or I mean, hell, like there's this gigantic like chess scandal that happened a couple of years ago.
I don't think any people or Pokemon are doing what the kind of chess scandals are going on this year, and if they are, that is too hot for TV. But you're right. It's in all aspects. It's just unfortunate that it had to be. I mean, Magic has had plenty of exables. I'm going to explore.
Two Explorers is my favorite.
See, there we go. Yeah, Bert and Cheney. Yeah, there you go. Bert and Cheaty. But it's or Blue Stretch Kick.
Oh, classic.
All right,
Blue
let's
Stretch,
go retro.
DBZ.
Let's go. Everything comes back home. But you're right. It's unfortunate, and I really wish that I'm hopefully going forward that I know we have great judges. I know a lot of really great judges and professors at a high level that are here for the integrity of the game, and I really hope these cheaters get weeded out, or we just few and far between. I really would like few and far between.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, and that's fair. I can't devil's advocate you or anything here, so
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, good job. Don't devil's advocate that one, and I won't name names.
Yeah, but
That's not mean.
but what if cheating was good, Jason?
But what if I did explore twice? And it's like, okay. Now, but other than that, it's been a pretty good year for the Pokemon competitive scene. It was nice to have Worlds again. It was really nice. It felt like a celebration of anything. I had one of my locals was a professor who actually went, and she worked at Worlds, went to London, had a great time. And it was super cool to finally have that back, and it's nice to look forward to. I know I'm trying to judge many events this year, so I can hopefully go next year as part of staff. That's going to take a lot from me, but it's really nice to have that competitive playback, and I think we took a really nice step forward. Oh, was my cat trying to get in there? Oh, there's Sabrina. We have a guest star up. She's kind of in there. Oh, yeah. Maybe she knows.
Right to the side there.
Oh, there she is. Anyway,
for
had
our
to be on.
YouTube viewers. Audio viewers are like, what?
We try to really, if you see this right now, I could describe her. There's a very large cat grooming itself, but she's beautiful. So we'll ignore that. But yeah, it's really exciting to have the competitive scene this year, how it's been and where it's going to go, and in terms of scale and events and what decks people are playing.
Yeah, the big thing is, we've said this in a lot of these podcasts, but this was the first kind of full year after we started to come back to some amount of like lower risk in-person events happening following the pandemic. So yeah, a lot of these podcasts have echoed this. Is like, it's just great to be in person again, playing again, which is, just, it's what we've all wanted, really.
Yeah, that's what we've all wanted for a long time. And a lot of people have been playing locally safely. And if you did that, more power to you. I know we did too. And regardless of people's opinions, that's not what this is about. It's just nice to get back to what we all are about this game, the community getting in there, playing, whether it's online and especially in person, and really getting back to what a lot of people are about with these games, getting in there competitively, these large scale events being run safely, and really just getting back to the basics of it, getting into the swing of things, getting out there and slinging cardboard,
Yep. That's what life's about, man. That's where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about 2023, because the big exciting thing, of course, is we have Crown Zenith as the crown jewel, the final set, the ultimate set in the Sword and Shield series, and then Scarlet and Violet.
Then we're in Scarlet and Violet. We're gonna have motorcycles, Pokemon, and all sorts of super cool stuff. But one more time, we have to go through this Sword and Shield dog. We're getting our 50th Zacian and Zamazenta, but I love those Pokemon. I think they're super cool.
I do too. I'm
a big fan.
I can't believe, I started out with Sword and Shield just kind of thinking, yeah, whatever, some more legendary or whatever. I legitimately, Zacian is my guy. I love him. He's so overpowered. But
oh yeah, 100%. 100%.
In game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Zacian, it's before you started play, but Zacian V was crazy.
Oh yeah.
That card is, oh my God, dude.
I've seen it played a little bit. It's
draw 3 cards, and that's what a lot of older control decks would play. They just, I'll end my turn and just draw 3 extra cards. That's wild. But it's nice. We got a lot of cool stuff coming up in Crown Zenith. We're getting Mewtwo V-Star. That art on that Mewtwo V-Star is insane. I don't know if you had a chance to look.
Good on these.
We're getting Rotom V-Star. We have a lot of other really cool stuff. We're getting more Radiant Pokemon. We're getting a Radiant Charjabug. Somebody.
Wait, I didn't know that one.
Oh yeah. Well, hold on. We've had Charjabugs be insane in the past. We had the Charjabug that it would attach for 2 lightning energy. It would turn into 2 lightning energy. I don't know what it is, but it's just a little Charjabug. We got Radiant Charjabug coming.
Someone there just loves Charjabug.
And more power to him. He's a little bug guy.
Look at
He's cool looking. I know, I was already saying, you see it, you're looking at it. Yeah. He's just a little bug. We're getting a bunch of really cool stuff. We have a really cool card in the new Thievul that's coming out. that looks at your prizes you have left. And if, or I'm sorry, if your opponent has 2 or few prizes left, they can't target your bench V Pokemon. Yeah, it's a basic Pokemon. Yeah, it's super cool. So it says if your opponent has 2 or few prize cards remaining,
boss you out of the game.
Whenever your opponent plays a supporter card from their hand, prevent of that card's effects to your benched Pokemon V.
That's nuts.
That's super sick. So we're getting so even, and this is stuff we've seen spoiled. Like if you want to take the time to go out there, you can find cards in the Japanese translations and stuff for Crown Zenith. It's right around the corner. It's a few weeks out actually for pre-releases. We're not that far off.
Yeah.
So it's really exciting to look forward to that. It's nice to finally get out of the Sword and Shield block. I think Sword and Shield was great for the game. We had a lot of really cool decks. I do think it's overstayed its welcome. A lot of that is to do with, the pandemic. We had two rotations affected by the pandemic where they were longer than they initially were supposed to be. Because traditionally, Worlds happens, we have the rotation right after. So now we've had Worlds and we're several months out of Worlds. I think almost 5 or 6 months by the time we have our rotation. So on the second World. So it's one of those things where it's like, all right, I think a lot of people are feeling the meta game, while good, is getting somewhat stale, that we're just adding cards to this pile of cards we've already had. And it'll be nice to finally just come in. I love the start of a new rotation as a player. It's a smaller set of cards. It opens up a lot of cooler strategies. Maybe the deck scopes are a little bit smaller, but you're playing cards you wouldn't probably traditionally play towards the end of a rotation. So it's nice for a kind of a breath of fresh air. So it's really exciting to look forward to. And obviously we have Scarlet and Violet coming up, and that's really exciting to finally go back to the lowercase EX, where it's EX in lowercase. Yeah. And I don't know how many of the cards you've seen. I don't care for the Terrastalize ability. I think it's too vanilla. That's what, if they can't be targeted when they're on the bench, I think is Terrastalize. I think that's all the ones we've seen so far. Arcanine EX. I think. Let's see here real quick. Yep. So the Terrastalize ability, and this is not all the ones we've seen so far. As long as this Pokemon as long as this Pokemon is on your bench, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks, both yours and opponents.
That's even less exciting than the
exactly. And not only that, the cards we've seen so far are very underwhelming. But if all the cards are like that, then that's okay. If all the cards are kind of this, they're not that great, they're not that flashy, well, if they're all like that, and that's what we have, then in a vacuum, they're fine.
We're just doing like a power reset.
Yeah, but at the same time, it is kind of disappointing to see the motorcycles not be super great. They're okay. But it's cool to go back to something that's old as new. So the big thing about EXs is you have to evolve them traditionally.
Yeah.
You don't get to go, I'm going to play my V into my V-Star or just play my GX. No, now I play a stage 1 of card named Growlithe and evolve into either Arcanine or Arcanine EX. So that's going to be really cool. And it's always exciting to go into the new block of games. Scarlet and Violet, whether people care about the performance issues or not, has been generally regarded as a really nice reset for Pokemon. They've expanded a lot of stuff. I personally enjoyed my time with the game. I had a ton of fun with it.
Same.
I had a blast. Did it perform the best at times? Absolutely not.
No.
I think I want to say
it's on the water.
Yeah, don't go on the water. Oh man, don't clip through the earth. I mean, there's a lot you could do. But it has generally been accepted as a really good game with a lot of really cool designs. And Terrastalize, I thought, would be really cool, more implemented within the game. Now, if I think Terrastalize eventually goes into the place where it gives it a different type, like Delta species, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I want. That is what I think everybody was thinking, and then we didn't get that.
Actually, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna fuel the fire of speculation here. This, which I'm sure people have talked about too, but I'm looking at this Arcanine that you showed me. So it is a Terrastalize Arcanine, but it's very clearly Terrastalized to the fire type here, based on the artwork, right? So there is all the room in the world. The setup's right 100%. There for them to just go, okay, now here's your Arcanine that's Terrastalized to dark type, and then it's a Delta species like.
And if they do that, they're gonna have because one of my favorite sets to open were back in the the evolution block days and stuff where we had the dual type Pokemon like Volcanion and stuff like that. That's so cool. Like one of my favorite decks had Galvantula as an attacker. It was jank. It was garbage.
Gen 5,
but it was fun. Galvantula is still one of the best, like probably top 10. If we had a whole episode on it, it's easy top 10. Might crack in the top 5 Pokemon in general.
We're going to do that. Actually, you know what? That's a great idea. Let's do it. We're going to do a Patreon exclusive episode sometime and grab you and a couple others. We're going to do top 10 Pokemon just for fun.
Oh, no. I guess it's going to be a bloodbath. But, if they hit that design space, they've got a lot of cool stuff they could do, and it'll be very, very exciting. And I really hope that they do that. But we haven't seen enough yet. We're still a ways out. We still have some time. So
the fact is, too, with all of these series, the way it always works is that the first few sets, they are just exploring the vanilla concepts. Sword and Shield just exploring Vs, and then the addition of V Max and V Star is a big change up later. Where they just halfway kind of through the cycle, they refresh things a little bit by like, here's a new twist on the mechanics. So I'm sure they're just, they're not wanting to put a whole, like, make it a completely different game right away with all these things. They're just going to start by showing off, here's EXs and here's a very vanilla Terrastalize, but I bet we'll see different stuff down the line.
Absolutely. And if they don't do justice by Tinkaton as a card, they're going to have problems.
Tinkaton needs an attack that says if your opponent's active Pokemon is a Corviknight, their deck gets thrown in the trash.
Oh yeah, the whole Weevil throwing the boat, the Exodia off the boat, whole 9 yards with that. You get a sling and no. But yeah, there's so many cool Pokemon from Scarlet and Violet in terms of, this is really cool that they did that, and Terrastalize being such a cool and generally well regarded. We haven't had a lot of competitive VCG yet, which I'm really excited to see. This is the first time where I've actually in a long time been really excited to build VGC teams with some of my friends and stuff like that and play. I want them to knock it out of the park in terms of Terrastalizing, because they did a very good job with Mega Evolutions. Yes, were they clunky to play at times? Absolutely. But Mega Evolutions, I loved them. Mega Scizor, Mega Gardevoir, Mega Rayquaza. Those all had great trading cards. Absolutely fantastic trading cards. Even Mega Alakazam. Mega Venusaur was fine.
Classic.
If you remember Dylan from Pansy, playing Super from Florida, Warren. The big Venusaur guy. Played a lot of that. Him and Rory played a lot of Venusaur.
Nice.
It's nice to have a fresh mold for the clay. And I think the biggest issue now is we haven't had rotation in so long. We feel like we've been doing the same thing for a long time. So I'm very excited and hopeful. Even the cards shown so far have been kind of lackluster. That's okay. It's a base set for building blocks, kind of like what you said. And I think Pokemon does an excellent job of taking a mechanic and by the end of its run, really taking what threads they can pull with it and pull them.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Definitely. Yeah. You mentioned some rules changes. You want to go over those?
So I don't want to speak out of turn. So let me exactly paraphrase it. That no one is surprised here about exactly what's going to happen. But where is it? I have it saved on my desktop.
Ooh, a boomer move. I like it.
I'm old, man. I'm like 500 years. Shut up, internet. Okay, so let's see where it's here. So basically, items now are going to become, instead of item cards, they're now trainer cards. So what that's going to do is it's going to limit your opponent being able to just search their kind of like their cards. It's going to limit their scope of tutoring for cards and playing cards, which is really nice. The big thing about it, in my opinion, still that's kind of a gray area, is that does it really help in the long grand scheme of things? Like, is it really like a great rule change? We don't know. But the big difference is tool cards are still going to be tools. It's the item cards are now going to, or I'm sorry, tool cards are still going to be tools. It's the item cards that are getting folded into trainers. So,
I'm confused. I thought items were trainer cards.
They are. So, like, again, I had it saved somewhere. Again, I'm old. Come on. Okay, so when it said a card says search for trainers, this is what I meant to say. It lets you get tools. When a card says search for items, it's not going to let you get a tool. That's the change.
was thinking of
So
a tool specifically.
yeah, so like cards like Scoop Up Net will still be an item.
Right.
Cards like Leafy Camouflage will be a tool, but not an item anymore. They will now be a trainer card instead.
Oh, okay, so the changes to tool cards, not item
Correct.
cards.
Yeah. Sorry, I knew I had it backwards. That's why I had to pull it up exactly because again, my brain rot.
Put you on the spot in the podcast. So in my experience, that's the best time to lie to everyone.
And I thought I wrote. Yeah, I was like, yeah, and they're gonna let us draw 8 cards a turn.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
And yeah, isn't that really cool? We already to do it.
We already can do it.
Yeah, we already can do it.
It doesn't matter.
But what it's going to do, again, I think it's going to be cool for, it's going to restrict some of the tutoring ability, which is great, because again, tools are good, but I think items are just way more egregious in general. They're crazy. Like item cards can be just the scope of item cards is nuts. So it's nice they're like limiting the scope of things you can grab. But I don't know in the long term how effective that is of a rule change yet. Again, it's in the infancy. We don't even know, or we haven't even started messing with it locally. When we did the supporter turn 1 change, we did it for about a month before it went live. We just did it. And just to kind of, at locals, I would be like, and especially when things weren't like, we weren't doing pre-releases and stuff anymore, I'd be like, you guys can just, proxy up the new set, just so we can get some games in. Because, product was really hard to get during the pandemic at points. Product was nuts to get. So It was nice to kind of do that. And we're going to probably implement it a little early and see how it goes. I think it's a time will tell kind of thing, but overall it's probably a healthy change. But again, in my nuance, I think it's a time will tell kind of thing versus oh my gosh, that's game breaking. I don't think so. I think it's probably fine.
Yeah. It seems like I agree, a nuanced, minor, but probably an important change. Like I think most important just for like making sure the design space is clear to have things do the things they want them to without doing the things they don't want them to. Basically,
yeah. Your cards like your ear do get worse.
Sure,
it's still an insane card, but it does get worse. So cards that are like catch-alls like that, those are going to definitely be effective. But I think cards that, if you want to get a tool, you're still going to play the cards to get a tool and find a way to get it. And it's not really going to be like a low impact change. I do think your cards that casually allow you to walk into them will definitely not be as played. You won't have that kind of level of comfort. You're going to have to work a little harder to get specific tools, but I don't think that it's going to be a huge barrier of entry.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. And then, of course, the most important change in Scarlet and Violet.
What's the most important change, Scarlet and Violet? We get to draw 8 cards?
No, that's not a thing that's happening.
Oh.
The borders are
well, yeah, duh. Oh my god, don't even get me started on the borders. I about had a heart attack. I lost it because for the longest time, if you look at the foiling, and we're getting their foiling. Did you see the new foils for Scarlet and Violet yet?
No, I didn't see that.
If you look at the Quaxley and stuff, it's kind of the flat foil that they do on their energies and stuff like that overseas, and it looks fantastic. Like it looks so good. Like awesome. Let me see. Yeah, it looks so good. So that silver border aesthetically is going to be great. Is it going to be a shock? Absolutely. Unfortunately, you're still not going to be able to use your favorite foreign art cards because we still have the not as cool Pokemon back.
I see the foils. I love them. I love.
Oh my god! Yeah. That's how the foil is going to look for the normal foil pattern. That looks so nice. Yeah. And with the silver, it's going to look super good aesthetically. It's the most important change in the history of trading card games. You heard it 100%. Here last because everybody's been talking about it. I think there has been nobody who's been like, I think that looks dumb. I'm like, well, I think you're wrong. And I think we're allowed to have opinions, but that one, I think there isn't one. It's you're either with the right side of history or you're with the yellow bordered cards. And I'm sorry. If that's you, well, tune into the next episode where I won't be talking about that. Maybe.
I'm going to reveal a little bit behind the curtain. I've already recorded the next episode, and I do talk about it.
Okay, well, still tune in, but maybe timestamp it. Like, don't watch this part, Pokemon. Yellow border likers, wanters.
If you guys are hearing this right now, you understand that Maindeck has a hardline stance at Maindeck. Officially, yellow borders are bad, silver borders are great. That's what it is.
That's it. The buck stops there.
Please unsubscribe if you don't like that.
Yeah, I'm a patron to Maindeck because of that things like that hardline stance on that, and it's just a reason why I support Maindeck. Honestly,
that's it. Yeah, it makes sense. Honestly, it makes sense. So if you agree with me, you need to go to the Patreon and support Maindeck. Also.
Absolutely, definitely. If you agree,
Yeah.
You have to. You're kind of
Share if you
obligated.
agree.
Share if you agree. Yeah, share if you agree. Absolutely.
All right, Jason. Well, do you have any last parting shots about 2022 or looking forward to Scarlet and Violet?
No, I think I covered everything. Really, most importantly, is if you took the time to listen to all of this and you're not as familiar with Pokemon and you know main deck content from other games and it branched out to you, I hope this was a fun conversation and I hope it got you interested in Pokemon. And if you're a seasoned Pokemon player or somebody who's played competitively and have never seen a drop of content, you're kind of hearing a perspective from two people who may not be as entrenched into the deep part of the metagame, but two people who really enjoy Pokemon and what the game does and what the, just everything kind of with it. So I'm hoping that you take what we said. Don't judge us too harshly. Don't judge me too harshly on my stances, and really just take the content for what it was. And I hope you enjoyed your time listening to it and continue to enjoy the game and grow your communities.
Yep, absolutely agree. Couldn't have said it better. We were just a couple of guys putting our opinions out there, and that's just how the internet be today.
That is the internet distilled. We are the internet. That could be your new slogan for the whole thing.
Maindeck.
We are the internet.
Yeah,
I'm sure that won't cause any issues anywhere.
All right, Jason. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I've been meaning to get you on, like I said, and I do hope it was an interesting conversation. So if you guys are out there, if you made it this far, thank you so much for listening to so much blathering on and repeating the same things over and over again about Pokemon and what little we know about things. But go ahead and let us know in the comments below if you made it this far and if you enjoyed the conversation and if you want to see Jason do some more stuff. Actually, you're going to hold his fate in your hands.
Yeah,
that's a surprise, by the way. This was actually a full-on like trial for you.
Oh, well, I would have definitely dressed for the occasion a little more. I have the shirts I bought from your wonderful shirts you put out, the really cool designs, the play to win shirt.
Maindeck.games?
Yeah, wow, really? I would have worn that, but that means I would have had to secret. If you're watching the video, you see that I'm in my bedroom and it's kind of boxes and stuff. I've had this IKEA dresser behind me for like 8 months. No one's come over to help me build it, but I'm in the process. I'm in the process of remodeling and stuff in my house, and I just think that being invited on to do this with everything I'm going on in my personal life with the wonderful world of retail and just everything I have going on, it was a really fun opportunity to have a time to talk with a really good friend of mine about just nerd stuff that we really enjoy. And just it's really nice to be able to share that on a medium that people may enjoy it and may take the time to listen to and take some good stuff away from it. And don't be too harsh on us if we got things wrong, but let us know if we got something wrong. I'm not infallible to your face. Behind your back, I can't do anything wrong.
Yep, exactly, Jason. And I feel that way as well about myself.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you guys so much for listening tonight. A quick shout out again to our patrons. Thank you guys for supporting everything we do here. You make everything we do possible because we take a lot of time to record these podcasts sometimes. And so your financial support really helps make this work out for everything and buying equipment and all the kind of things we need to do. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your support. You will be able to catch us actually if you're listening to this on release, which that's really impressive. Tomorrow we're releasing the final episode of the year, the New Year's Eve episode, where we are going to be going over it's actually the return of the 4-person main deck podcast. Myself, Mike Piper, Kevin Kerrigan, and wow, I just like totally blanked on Jordan Syverson. Sorry, it's getting late for me, guys. I'm sorry about that.
For you.
It's okay. He's not going to listen to that part. So you can catch all that. It's actually, like I said, but pulling the curtain back a little bit, we did it. I think it's my favorite podcast we've ever done. It is super, super fun to listen to. I at least it was super fun to chat with. So hopefully you guys have fun listening to it also. And we're going to talk all about 2023 and the many, many games we are very excited about in 2023. So I hope you come on back for that one. And then we will see you guys after that in the new year, 2023, releasing some more, not as many podcasts at once. This was a December thing, okay? This is a regular thing. Please don't expect 9 podcasts a month going forward. I can't do it. It's not possible, but I will be more regular if possible. We have a wonderful bunch of co-hosts here, and I think we have some great ideas for new podcasts coming up where some of our guests can swing on back. We can talk to Jason again about some more stuff in the future too. So thank you guys so much for listening. You have a wonderful night, and we'll see you guys in the next episode of the Maindeck Podcast.